Chapter 1174. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong's figures suddenly appeared outside the dense fog forest where the colorful fog lingered. The two of them looked around and didn't find any movement. Their gazes landed on the gorgeous fog with different expressions. In reality, it was very unlikely that anyone would come here. Although the colorful fog was mesmerizing, there was no need for ordinary people to set foot in this barren land. Hong Tailong suddenly turned around and looked at Yu Qianqiu, sighing, "Star bead is really magical. Can actually go wherever you want to go. No matter how far the distance is, it's all in the blink of an eye. It's not as magical as you think. You have to set the coordinates beforehand." Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment. He turned around and asked curiously, "How much do you know about star bead?" He originally thought that the other party understood star bead very well. In the end, the other party's words made him suspicious. "I'm not too sure. I've only heard rumors that it's a divine artifact refined by Dao. Every bead might have different functions, but those who can use star bead are people who can inherit Dao." Hong Tailong looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated gaze. There was also some envy in it. Yu Qianqiu smiled disapprovingly. He didn't even know who Dao was, let alone inheriting Dao. Just the star bead that he knew had already changed owners 3 times. First it landed in by Changchun's hands. Then it landed in by Suzhen's hands. Finally he picked it up. It had nothing to do with inheriting Dao. However, he only kept these words in his heart. He wouldn't tell Hong Tailong. However, he was still rather interested in that mysterious Dao. He asked, "Who exactly is that Dao? I've heard people mentioning it several times, but they didn't mention it in detail. Can you tell me about it?" Hong Tailong shook his head and said, "I've only heard of it. I've never seen it. It seems that only a few people have seen it. However, my dragon race and phoenix race have always obeyed him." "Damn it. Seems like experts like to play mysterious." Yu Qianqiu curled his lips in disdain and looked at the dense fog forest again. "What do we do now?" Hong Tailong looked at the 7-colored fog with a perplexed expression. Then he said decisively, "Go in. First I'll destroy the Immortal Ascension stage and naturally cut off the connection between the immortal world and the human world. Then I'll take the soul-forming smoke." "Alright." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and the two of them disappeared. In the blink of an eye they reappeared in the golden square. The moment Hong Tailong landed on the ground, he scanned his surroundings. Then a red light erupted from his body and soared into the sky. His astonishing aura forced Yu Qianqiu to quickly move far away to observe. Roar. A resounding and vigorous dragon roar resounded throughout the world, shaking the entire basin and the golden plaza. The rainbow-colored clouds in the surroundings began to surge. After the red light that pierced through the heavens and the earth vanished, a 200 zhang long red dragon stretched out its claws. Its imposing aura was unstoppable. After its body, which was covered in red scales, curled up and swam back, the arrogant dragon shows remorse suddenly raised a gust of wind and plunged down. Boom. The altar in the center of the golden plaza was smashed deep into the ground. Then the huge red dragon rapidly circled around the huge basin. The huge dragon's fangs opened its mouth and sucked in crazily. All the gold bricks, gold nuggets, gold pillars and other gold objects on the golden plaza were sucked into its stomach in just a short while. The entire dazzling golden plaza immediately became a scene of devastation. Then the huge red dragon shook its head and tail at lightning speed, crazily crashing into the surrounding mountains and basins. Rumble. Amidst the rumbling sounds, Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air and quickly dodged to the sky to observe the situation. He saw that the huge basin below had completely collapsed in just a moment's time. Everything had been razed to the ground. The rainbow-colored fog that had gathered in the surroundings had also lost its restraints and started to disperse with the wind. Oh! The dragon roared once again. The huge red dragon soared into the sky and looked down at the vast land. Looking at the huge dragon beside him with its 4 claws wide open and its long body wriggling with the sound of wind and thunder, Yu Qianqiu was so excited that he actually dodged and stood on the huge dragon's ferocious head. He stood between the 2 antlers with his hands clasped behind his back. A feeling of arrogance welled up in him. The huge dragon's red eyes turned to look at him. It did not show any displeasure. Instead it said in a deep rumbling voice, "You have the star bead. Are you afraid of the soul-transforming smoke?" "No." Yu Qianqiu shook his head forcefully. Then stand still. I'm going to take this soul-transforming smoke. I can't let it wreak havoc on the world. Oh. The dragon roared angrily in the sky. The huge red scales on its body slightly opened up. Its aura surged up and down its body. Suddenly the wind and clouds surged. The huge dragon opened its fangs and swooped down. The vast land was suddenly swept up by a gust of wind. A strong suction force carried the rainbow-colored fog into the huge dragon's mouth like a rainbow. The huge dragon soared into the sky and danced around, chasing after the scattered rainbow-colored fog. After sweeping away all the rainbow-colored fog, the huge dragon shook its head and waved its tail as it soared into the sky. After circling around its surroundings once, another resounding dragon roar shook the heavens and the earth. Without any hesitation, it directly rode the wind and climbed the clouds, flying across the sky towards the horizon. Dragon's roar of the 9 heavens changes. Hong Tai Long might have been trapped underground for a long time. It had been a long time since he indulged himself in the sky. From time to time he would let out a deafening roar to vent his emotions. Yu Qianqiu expressed his understanding. He did not stop Hong Tai Long and allowed him to soar into the sky. Meanwhile he was also enjoying the legendary feeling of riding a dragon. No matter how fierce the wind blew against him, his green robe fluttered in the sky. He felt that his life was not in vain. However, it was, after all, a huge fellow flying in the sky. Coupled with Hong Tai Long's deafening roars from time to time, it was hard for the mortals on the ground not to notice it. However, no one could see the tiny Yu Qianqiu standing on the dragon's head. Look, what's that in the sky? Divine dragon. It's a divine dragon. It's a divine dragon. Everyone look, it's a divine dragon. Passing through the borders of Wuxia, the mortals on the ground raised their heads and pointed at the sky. Everyone who could walk rushed out of their houses or onto the streets, pointing at the sky. Hong Tai Long seemed to enjoy the feeling of being the center of attention and admiration again. It was as if he had found the supreme glory that belonged to the dragon race. He intentionally slowed down his flying speed and roared even more frequently, as if he was afraid that others could not see him. When he saw a city with many people, he would even fly a few rounds in the sky to show off, flying towards the most crowded places. Yu Qianqiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. This Hong Tai Long was old, but he was still a flirtatious dragon. If he had known earlier, he would have dragged some people to see the scene of him being imprisoned. In the sky above Wuxia's capital city, a few dragon roars shook the entire city. In the blink of an eye, the streets were filled with people pointing at the dragon flying in the sky. Endless sounds of astonishment and commotion rose and fell. In the palace, Shi Wenguang and the officials were discussing matters when they suddenly heard the shocking dragon roar. Another guard ran over to report that there was a dragon flying in the sky. Shi Wenguang and the officials immediately ran out to watch the commotion. The imperial concubines of the imperial concubines also stood outside and looked up at the sky. In the imperial preceptor Yongzhen's residence, a stream of light shot into the sky. Shi Xiaotian stood tall in the sky, looking at the dragon flying in circles in front of him. Other than shock, he was also on high alert. He vaguely realized that there was someone standing on the dragon's head. When Hong Tai Long's vanity was satisfied and he left, Shi Xiaotian suddenly realized that the person riding on the dragon was actually Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing with his hands behind his back, also noticed him. He nodded at him and smiled. The dragon instantly flew past the petrified Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian was startled awake by the strong wind and immediately shouted, "Boss!" He quickly chased after him. Yu Qianqiu turned to look at him and waved his hand with a warm smile, indicating for him to go back. He then turned back and scolded softly, "Hong Tai Long, have you had enough of being coquettish? If someone familiar sees you, they would think that I like to show off. I've only come out for a breath of fresh air after over 100,000 years. I've lost my composure. Please forgive me." Hong Tai Long chuckled. With a shake of his body, he quickly adjusted his direction and increased his speed, flying straight for the demon region. How could Shi Xiaotian catch up to Hong Tai Long's flying speed? Seeing Yu Qianqiu riding the dragon into the horizon, he couldn't catch up no matter how hard he tried. A feeling of helplessness welled up in his heart as he stopped in the sky. His face was filled with desolation. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Boss would be able to ride a dragon and fly in the sky. Every time he saw Boss would give him a surprise that made him envious. Boss's level was getting higher and higher and he was falling further and further behind. To be honest, the life that Yu Qianqiu had displayed was the cultivation life that Zhou Xian had yearned for a long time. Only by cultivating like this could one not cultivate in vain. He had always desired this, but it was a pity that Boss did not bring him along, leaving him with endless melancholy and grief. However, Zhou Xian was inexperienced, so how could he know the dangers behind this glory? Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu had purposely pulled Zhou Xian out of danger because of their friendship. Humans were always like this. What they could not obtain was what they desired the most. They would often neglect the beauty around them. Not long after the depressed Zhou Xian returned to the imperial preceptor Yongzhen's residence, his father Shi Wenguang hurriedly rushed over. He pulled Zhou Xian aside and asked anxiously, "Was that a divine dragon flying in the sky just now? Was it a divine dragon? Did I see wrongly?" The shock on his face had yet to fade. He had purposely come over to seek confirmation. Zhou Xian sighed and slowly sat on the spacious armchair. With a desolate smile he said, "Yes. The one riding the divine dragon was Ol. Mr. Yu." "It's Mr. Yu?" Shi Wenguang exclaimed. His face was filled with envy as he shook his head and sighed. After a long time he said, "Riding the divine dragon to fly in the sky. Mr. Yu is really a godly person. Why didn't you invite him over?" Wanting to see Yu Qianqiu was a pretense. In fact, he did not like to see Yu Qianqiu at all. This was because he was used to being an emperor and was used to being high and mighty. He was a little conflicted about bowing to others. In fact, he really wanted to see the legendary divine dragon up close. Mr. Yu Qianqiu has other matters to attend to, so it's inconvenient for him to come. Zhou Xian squeezed out a smile and said, "Father, you should go back to handle the affairs of the country. I'm going to cultivate in seclusion." Shi Wenguang sighed and left, leaving Zhou Xian paralyzed on the armchair. In his mind he recalled the awe-inspiring scene of his boss riding the divine dragon. It was a pity that he could not share in the glory. Little did he know that after they parted, the two of them never met again. The scene of Yu Qianqiu riding the divine dragon and turning back to wave at him with a smile became the most unforgettable scene in Zhou Xian's long life. He searched for it in the future but could never think of it. He could only reminisce about it. Chapter 1175. The sky was high and the clouds were vast. Not a single trace of green could be seen in the demonic ghost region. It was no longer the demonic ghost region that was covered in dark clouds and overgrown with demonic ghosts. In the vast wilderness, Yu Qianqiu walked around with his hands behind his back. Under his feet was an underground space that spewed out green flames. Below him was a surging lava river. Yu Qianqiu sent Hong Tailong down, but he didn't dare to face the naked fat kid who was looking at him curiously. He quickly escaped outside, not wanting to hear or see the conversation between Hong Tailong and the kid. Yu Qianqiu walked to a cliff with his hands behind his back and looked around. He was unable to connect the desolate scene before him with the famous demonic ghost region of the past. He silently pondered for a long time. Suddenly the ground shook, followed by the sound of something breaking through the ground. Yu Qianqiu pursed his lips but he didn't turn around. Green flames gushed out from the hole on the ground as Hong Tailong slowly rose up with the bare buttocks child in tow. The child looked left and right, curiously looking at this desolate world. This was the first time he had seen the true appearance of this world. A small bird that flew across the sky had aroused his great interest, causing his gaze to chase after it with an unrelenting desire to part with it. Yu Qianqiu. Hong Tailong's voice was heavy as he walked behind Hong Tailong with the kid. Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around and saw the kid cowering behind Hong Tailong in fear, as if he already knew his fate. Yu Qianqiu wanted to squeeze out a harmless smile, but it looked worse than crying. He coughed and smiled bitterly at Hong Tailong. "Forget it." Hong Tailong pulled the kid out from behind, squatted down and looked at the kid. "What's wrong? Didn't we agree on this?" The kid looked at Yu Qianqiu with fear and replied weakly, "Grandpa, I'm scared." Hong Tailong buried his head, then raised it and smiled. Didn't Grandpa tell you? The immortal realm doesn't allow people from the lower realm to step into it. This is the only way I can bring you back to the immortal realm. Furthermore, you shouldn't exist in the mortal realm." Hong Tailong, forget it. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and bowed. Unexpectedly, the child bit his finger and said to Yu Qianqiu with a bit of shyness, Can I go see the world first? Then he lowered his head and said in an aggrieved tone, I still don't know what the human world is like. I'm afraid that when I reach the god realm, Hong Tailong frowned, but Yu Qianzhou hurriedly said, Sure. Hong Tailong, bring him around to take a look. I beg you. He could only beg Hong Tailong. He did not dare to accompany this child to look around. Hong Tailong carried the child and turned into a beam of light, disappearing into the distance. Yu Qianzhou touched his forehead in a dilemma. He walked to the place where the blue fire was spewing out and jumped down. He used the metal art and earth art to seal the fire hole. Then he flew back up and used the earth art to completely bury the space below. Then he sat down cross-legged on the ground. 3 days later, Hong Tailong carried the child back. The child had already put on his clothes and was holding a candied haw in each of his hands. However, his eyes had lost their usual liveliness. He was just a gluttonous child who felt that the candied haw was delicious and was munching on it numbly. Yu Qianzhou looked at the child and sensed something. Hong Tailong placed the child in front of him. The child looked at Yu Qianzhou blankly as if he did not recognize him. Hong Tailong took away the candied haw in the child's hands, sealed it in a crystal ball and swallowed it. When the child saw that there was nothing left to eat, he immediately hugged Hong Tailong's thigh and wailed. Glistening tears immediately appeared in Hong Tailong's eyes. He raised his head to the sky and howled. After which his hand moved like lightning, slapping the child's head. The clothes on the child's body instantly turned into ashes, while the child's body condensed into a red ball of light in his palm. Hong Tailong sent the red ball of light to the mouth of Yu Qianzhou, who was sitting cross-legged. Yu Qianzhou's dry lips swallowed and slowly opened his mouth. Hong Tailong slapped the red ball of light into his mouth, then turned towards the sky and choked with tears. Yu Qianzhou immediately felt a boiling sensation in his abdomen. He suppressed his agitated emotions and forced the red ball of light in his abdomen into his dantian. Suddenly, a golden light burst out from Yu Qianzhou's dantian and shone on the red ball of light. In an instant, the red ball of light turned back into the child. The child cheered and flew toward the red crystal bead. He swallowed the red crystal bead into his stomach. In an instant, red light burst out from his body. Yu Qianzhou suddenly felt a connection with the child. The child's expression instantly turned solemn. He sat cross-legged on the spot where the red crystal ball originally was and began to revolve around the nascent soul in his dantian along with the other 4 crystal balls. Yu Qianzhou immediately felt that his cultivation had increased a little. However, the increase was not huge. When he thought about how he could accept the cultivation of the 5 spirits after devouring them, he reckoned that the child's cultivation had fused with his own. The child's innate understanding of fire surged into his mind like a tidal wave. He then began to quietly sort it out. At night, Hong Tailong gazed at the endless starry sky with his hands behind his back. Suddenly, a light flashed behind him. He slowly turned his head and saw a ball of blue fire on Yu Qianzhou's left shoulder, a ball of black fire on his right shoulder, and a ball of purple fire on top of his head. The situation was extremely strange. Not long after, the blue and black fire on his left and right shoulders slowly floated to the top of his head and pressed towards the purple fire in the middle. After the 3 flames collided with each other, they violently fluctuated as if they were repelling each other. Yu Qianzhou, who was sitting cross-legged, had a grave expression on his face. After about 2 hours, the 3 violently fluctuating flames finally calmed down and started to merge together bit by bit. When the 3 flames had completely merged together, Yu Qianzhou's eyes suddenly opened. 2 rainbow-colored rays of light shot out from his eyes. The overlapping 3-colored flames above his head rumbled like thunder and completely merged together in an instant. The gorgeous 3-colored flames turned into 7 colors. Instantly, the flames rose to a height of 100 meters. A rainbow-colored fire dragon burned incessantly above Yu Qianzhou's head. The terrifyingly high temperature immediately caused the ground to crack with crackling sounds. Countless cracks rapidly extended in all directions. Hong Tailong's pupils shrank. Even though he was a fire elemental fire dragon, he still found it hard to endure. Suddenly, he felt a terrifyingly high temperature surrounding his body. Clearly, Yu Qianzhou had noticed it. True Samadhi fire. Hong Tailong exclaimed. The remaining sadness on his face was instantly swept away. He clapped his hands and shouted, "You succeeded. The rainbow-colored rays of light that burst out from Xianxia's eyes quickly retracted, forming two balls of rainbow-colored flames in his eyes. Xianxia slowly stood up and spread his arms to embrace the heavens and earth. His entire body instantly ignited with rainbow-colored flames, combining with the fire dragon above his head. They soared into the sky, reaching a height of 1,000 meters. The world flickered with rainbow-colored light, illuminating the desolate demon domain. It was as if the demon domain had obtained a new life. Xianxia slowly looked at Hong Tailong and said indifferently, "So this is the true Samadhi fire. So it is rainbow-colored. I can feel its terrifying destructive might. It even gives me the urge to fight the demon lord 3 nights head-on." Hong Tailong turned a deaf ear to Xiao Chen's words. He raised his head and looked at the rainbow-colored flames that soared 1,000 meters in shock. He cried out involuntarily, "Why is there so much true Samadhi fire?" Lowering his head, he looked at Xianxia and said, "How many blue flames, black flames and purple flames are hidden in your body? You actually managed to fuse so many true Samadhi fire?" "This is only a portion. The true Samadhi fire in my body is enough to turn the area within 1,000 meters into a sea of true Samadhi fire. Furthermore, after fusing the 3 flames, it is equivalent to having 2 empty spots in my body. I can also collect the 3 flames at any time and fuse them at any time. My body can store more than twice the amount of true Samadhi fire. A mere 1,000-meter-long fire dragon is nothing," Xianxia said indifferently. Hong Tailong shook his head in disbelief. He had seen the true Samadhi fire by chance in the Immortal realm. However, he had only collected 3 types of flames and fused them, then stored them in special treasures for future use. He had never heard of anyone being able to store the true Samadhi fire in their own body. Furthermore, it was such a large-scale storage and could be refined and stored at any time. This is simply unbelievable. If the artifact refinement experts of the Immortal realm were to find out about this, they would definitely capture you and use you as a refinement fire cauldron. You must know that the best fire seed for refining divine equipment is this true Samadhi fire that can refine anything," Hong Tailong exclaimed. Xianxia gently clasped his palms together, and the soaring true Samadhi fire immediately retreated back into his body. The rainbow-colored flames leaping in his eyes also disappeared at the same time. Only then did Hong Tailong dare to approach him. He patted his shoulder and laughed. "With so much true Samadhi fire, you and I now have the capital to make a trip to the Immortal realm and the Netherworld. We'll slaughter those bastards until they wail like ghosts and howl like wolves. We'll let them know that I, Hong Tailong, have returned." Xianxia shook his head and sighed. "By right, I should be happy. However, I can't feel happy at all. This is all thanks to Qing." Speaking of that naked child, Hong Tailong's expression instantly dimmed. He smiled faintly and said, "I wonder when I can return to the Immortal realm. Even if I do return to the Immortal realm, I'm afraid it'll be several tens of thousands of years before I can see Qing'er again." Xianxia took a deep breath. He pulled himself together and said, "All right. Let's not talk about such a depressing matter. Let's go to the gate of the Netherworld to retrieve the heaven and earth splitting arrow. Then we'll use the true Samadhi fire to completely seal the passageway to the Netherworld. After that, we'll join hands and go to the Immortal realm and the Netherworld to deal with them. It'll be best if we can capture Qintai. I'll devour him as well. At that time, my cultivation will skyrocket. I want to see how the devil path will unify the 3 realms." The 2 of them disappeared from where they were at the same time. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in front of the gate of the Netherworld. Looking at the gigantic divine arrow embedded in the gate of the Netherworld, Xianxia made a grabbing motion with his 5 fingers and said sternly, "Come back." The divine arrow immediately shone with a golden light and shrunk rapidly. The gate of the Netherworld closed quickly as well. A chilly wind that was as sharp as ink whistled out. After the gate of the Netherworld was completely closed, there were still a few large holes in the middle of the gate. They were the large holes made by the sharp hexagonal blade of the divine arrow. The chilly wind that was as sharp as ink continued to pour out from the holes. Chapter 1176. Xianxia's long green robe fluttered in the fierce chilly wind, but he was indifferent to it. His eyes fell on the reliefs on the dark gate. The faces of the old man, the child, the man and the woman were all different. Their expressions were vivid and lifelike as if they were telling him something. Wang. A rainbow-colored light blossomed in this underground world filled with cold wind. The true samadhi fire enveloped Yu Qianqiu's entire body. The wind didn't scatter it as if it was solid. Yu Qianqiu's expression was solemn. He didn't know if he could completely seal the underworld passage by doing this, nor did he know if it was right, but he knew that this ghost gate was connected to the human world. It was too unfair to the living beings in the human world. If the ghost cultivator inside was unhappy, the living beings in the human world would suffer. No matter if it's right or wrong, since the affairs of the world are unpredictable, then let me be the one to administer punishment on behalf of the heaven. Whether it's right or wrong, I will bear the responsibility alone. A loud voice that sounded like he had become a Buddha suddenly resounded in the underground space. Perhaps it was because he had become a demon, but the skeleton sculptures on the walls of the Netherworld Iron Mountain immediately reverberated with the same voice. The voice was like the sound of endless Sanskrit. Hong Tailong's heart suddenly surged with an indescribable solemn feeling. His gaze swept across the surroundings, but he didn't know how this voice was formed. Yu Qianqiu had already struck out with his palm. The true samadhi fire on his body shot out from his arm, forcing back the cold wind that was blowing out. The rainbow-colored wall of fire covered the entire ghost gate of the netherworld. The expressions of the human skulls on the black door gradually changed. Then it slowly melted and disappeared, fusing with the entire door. It was as if all living beings had cut off their extravagant desires towards this world. All greed, anger, and delusion were separated into yin and yang. Dust to dust, dust to dust. The two worlds of yin and yang would never be connected again. The few cracks on the dark door were also gradually melted by the melted black molten iron. The gap between the door and the door frame was also completely closed. Yu Qianqiu withdrew the true samadhi fire back into his body with a serious expression. The mournful, sinister winds completely died down, and the echoes of the Buddhist chants also disappeared. After the two of them looked around, Yu Qianqiu turned around and spread his hands at Hong Tailong. Didn't you say that after the samadhi true fire sealed the underworld gate, the underworld passage would completely disappear? How come I don't feel anything? Could it be that it completely disappeared just like that? I've only heard of this legend. How would I know if it's true or not? Hong Tailong smiled bitterly. Before he could finish his sentence, he realized that there was something wrong with Yu Qianqiu's gaze as he looked behind him. He quickly turned around and saw that the blazing ghost flames were gradually dying down. The blazing flames from earlier were slowly being suppressed, and the intensity of the flames gradually weakened to the point where there was nothing left. The red molten lava kept on seething. Suddenly, as if a hole had opened up in the ground, all the fiery red molten lava instantly gushed into the depths of the ground. The entire underground space became pitch black, and even with their cultivations they could not see each other. It was as if they had entered some kind of black hole. Yu Qianqiu immediately became vigilant, afraid that there might be some danger. He immediately wanted to release his divine sense to bring Hong Tailong away, but he realized that he could not release his divine sense outside his body. What made him even more horrified was that his connection with Utopia had been completely severed. He could not leave even if he wanted to. Hong Tailong. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth and shouted, but he realized that he could not make any sound. He wanted to move his limbs, but he realized that it was just wishful thinking. It was as if his soul had completely lost connection with his physical body, and only his thoughts and consciousness still existed. Damn. How did this happen? Could it be that I've really done something wrong? Is this a punishment for me? Yu Qianqiu shouted silently into the endless darkness. A deep sense of fear rose from the bottom of his heart, but it was mostly filled with indignation and grief. He hysterically wanted to tear apart this endless darkness, but he was powerless to do so. Suddenly, spots of light flashed in front of his eyes, and he saw Hong Tailong, who was just inches away from him. The horrified Hong Tailong also saw him, and the two of them were stunned at the same time. They subconsciously raised their hands only to discover that they could move. However, their abilities had not returned. The two of them wanted to get closer, but they realized that no matter how fast they walked, they could not get close to each other. This short distance seemed to have become the end of the world. The two of them desperately ran toward each other. However, the two of them fell to the ground in exhaustion, unable to take another step forward. The endless feeling of strangeness almost caused the two of them to break down. They could see each other shouting loudly for them, but not only could they not hear it, neither could the other party. The two of them, who were sitting paralyzed on the ground, seemed to be floating in the endless void. They looked around helplessly, and the nether metal wall that was embossed with countless skulls suddenly became clear. Spots of light constantly floated out from the two empty eye sockets of the skulls. When the entire space was filled with countless spots of light, the skull wall quietly disappeared into the void. The drifting spots of light gradually moved rhythmically, but it also seemed to be without any pattern. Gradually, it formed a scene that looked like a vast starry sky. The two of them suddenly realized that they were sitting paralyzed in the endless starry sky, and they were even more shocked. The vast starry sky was weaving an ancient existence. Suddenly, all the stars trembled and like a meteor shower, they flew toward a certain direction, some even passing through the bodies of the two of them. The two of them looked in that direction and they saw the door to the netherworld. All the meteor shower easily passed through the wall without any resistance, and the door to the netherworld was not damaged at all. The scene was exceptionally magnificent, and an indescribable feeling of great vicissitudes surged into the hearts of the two of them. When the last spot of light flew through the door, the entire door to the netherworld suddenly distorted, turning into a ball of black light. The black light was so deep that it seemed like it could devour everything. The more it spun, the bigger it became. Suddenly, it condensed into a point and disappeared. The two of them immediately felt the world tremble as if they had woken up from a nightmare. The two of them stood together looking at each other. The bright and beautiful sunlight shone down from the sky, shining on the two of them. The two of them raised their heads to look at the sky in astonishment, and discovered that they had unknowingly stood in a vast and deep pit. The sun was at noon. Looking around, the door to the netherworld had disappeared, and the netherworld iron walls that were carved with countless skulls had also disappeared. The netherworld ghost flames, the surging magma, and even the netherworld hole formed by the netherworld iron had disappeared. It was as if the two of them had been transferred to a strange pit in an instant. A small insect that came out of nowhere fluttered its wings and flew between the two of them. The two of them stared at it without blinking. Perhaps the small insect was attracted by the bright colors, as it first flew towards Hong Tai Long, who was dressed in red and danced between his eyes. Hong Tai Long's eyes that were staring at it immediately turned into a cross-eyed look. The small insect circled around for a while before losing interest in Hong Tai Long. It seemed to be more interested in Yu Qianqiu and directly landed on Yu Qianqiu's face. Yu Qianqiu's eyes turned and he subconsciously gave a slap. It was a clear and resounding slap, causing his own face to feel pain. Hong Tai Long stared at him in astonishment, while Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He raised his hand to take a look and saw that the small insect had been slapped into pieces. The two of them looked at each other again and Hong Tai Long weakly shouted, "Yu Qianqiu?" Yu Qianqiu was startled and immediately shouted, "Hong Tai Long." The two of them heard each other's shout and looked at where they were standing. They were still in the same position as before the anomaly happened. They were not paralyzed on the ground at all. They moved their hands and feet and took a few steps forward. When the two of them got closer, they were touching and pinching each other like fools. Suddenly, Yu Qianqiu gave Hong Tai Long a fierce slap on the face. Hong Tai Long covered his face and roared angrily, "What are you doing?" Yu Qianqiu picked his ears amidst the deafening roar and heaved a sigh of relief. "Damn it. He's really alive. That scared this old man to death. Where is this place?" He flew out as if nothing had happened. Not only was Hong Tai Long not angry, he was also pleasantly surprised when he came back to his senses and flew out with him. The two of them stood at the edge of the huge crater and looked around. Hong Tai Long was not too familiar with this place, but Yu Qianqiu could recognize it. They were still within the desolate demonic ghost region, and the original territory of Ill Wind Valley had been completely dug away. He had no idea where it had been dug to. "Where is this?" Hong Tai Long asked, not daring to be sure. "We're still in the mortal realm where we're doing good deeds. You're right, the passageway to the netherworld has completely disappeared." Yu Qianqiu raised his head to look at the sun, and realized that the time had already changed from midnight to noon. However, the process that the two of them had experienced would definitely not exceed 4 hours, and it was a very strange experience. "Sigh. It's good that you're fine. I was almost scared to death. I've never encountered such a strange thing before." Hong Tai Long laughed and patted his chest in relief. After relaxing, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "What should we do next? Go to the immortal realm in the netherworld?" Yu Qianqiu nodded his head heavily, looked around and let out a long sigh and said, "The matters in this mortal realm are more or less settled. It's time to solve the problems in other places. Let's go." With a wave of his hand, the two of them disappeared at the same time. In the Divine Ruin Realm base, Hong Tai Long strolled around with his hands clasped behind his back. When everyone found out that he was the divine dragon that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch rode back then, they looked at him with incomparable shock, especially Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. When the two of them felt the powerful dragon aura on his body, they actually faintly felt uneasy and restless. However, when Hong Tai Long saw the pheasant standing on Wu Lishua's shoulder, he couldn't help but cry out in surprise, "Phoenix! So it's a dragon. Who are you? Why are you so noisy? I don't know you." The pheasant opened its eyes and choked him, then continued to stand on Wu Lishua's shoulder and closed its eyes to rest. Hong Tai Long was speechless. Originally he felt that he was quite high and mighty, but he didn't expect that there would even be a phoenix of the same level as him here. His sense of superiority was immediately dampened, and he immediately became more well-behaved, no longer showing off that he was a divine dragon. After Yu Qianqiu gathered the various leaders to inquire about the recent progress, he dragged Hong Tai Long to the Great Snowy Mountain in the Netherworld. Chapter 1177. In the Great Snow Mountain of the Underworld, deep in the snowy plains, there was an ice cliff glowing with icy blue light that had existed for countless years. Silver armor soldier, purple armor soldier, blue armor soldier, and red armor soldier paced back and forth in front of the ice palace's gate, as if guarding the gate. The ice souls inside the ice sculptures shone with brilliant colors. They looked helpless and melancholy, thinking about something. Thousand armor soldier. Demon King 3 Knight has led the army of Demon Dao back to the Three Realms. What do you think? Red armor soldier suddenly turned around and asked silver armor soldier. Purple armor soldier and blue armor soldier turned around at the same time. He's already come out, what can I think? Silver armor soldier stopped in front of a carp ice sculpture, his gaze focused on the eyes of the ice sculpture. There were 2 black ice souls there. Red armor soldier slapped an ice pillar in the pavilion next to him and sighed. "We took such a great risk to seal Demon King 3 Knight and the others back then. What a great price we paid. But now the Underworld Emperor has released them and we've become the dogs of Demon Dao again. Back then we risked our lives to seal the Demon Realm for the peace of the Three Realms. But now, soldier, you're thinking too much." Silver armor soldier looked at him coldly and said in a low voice, "The Underworld Emperor has his reasons for doing this." The other 3 were silent. Within the ice palace, Xue Linglong, who was wrapped in a furry fur coat, fell asleep peacefully again. However, her face still had a sickly flush. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress both heaved a sigh of relief. They cupped their hands towards Bai Qi, who walked down from the ice bed and said, "Thank you, Emperor of the Underworld. We only talk about friendship, not thanks." Bai Qi smiled elegantly as he stepped on the ice barefoot. "This is why I didn't expose our relationship even in the most difficult times. If I really want to thank you, my 4 brothers should be the one thanking you for taking care of them. Underworld Emperor, you're too kind." The Snow Empress shook her head and smiled bitterly. The true Samadhi fire in Linglong's body is getting harder and harder to suppress. If the Emperor of the Underworld hadn't arrived in time and used his profound cultivation to suppress it, we wouldn't know what to do. The Snow Empress sat quietly beside her daughter. Bai Qi looked at Xue Linglong, who was sleeping peacefully, and nodded with a serious expression. "Seems like it's getting more and more serious each time. Don't worry, if you need anything, just look for me. I'll be there anytime. I'll look for an opportunity to borrow the power of the Devil's Path to find the fire spirit of the 5 great spirits of heaven and earth. Hopefully I'll be able to remove the Samadhi true fire from Linglong's body in one fell swoop." The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress looked at each other. They wanted to say something but hesitated. The Snow Emperor could not help but ask, "I heard that the Emperor of the Underworld has released the Demon Lord of 3 Knights and the others?" Bai Qi hesitated for a moment. He said, "I understand your worries, but you can rest assured. Demon Monarch 3 Knights has already promised me that I will still represent the Underworld and the Demonic Path Army will not harass you. As for the outside world, you and your wife have never cared about worldly affairs. The changes outside have nothing to do with you. The Great Snow Mountain is still your Great Snow Mountain. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to make the decision when the time comes." The Snow Emperor sighed in his heart. However, there was nothing he could do. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Thank you, Emperor of the Underworld." Bai Qi could guess what they were thinking. However, he was also in a difficult position. He still smiled warmly and said, "All right. My 4 brothers have troubled you for a long time. I'm here to bring them away with me. We'll meet again in the future." The couple hurriedly sent him off. The 3 of them walked him all the way to the entrance of the Ice Palace. Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers and the other 3 also came over to express their gratitude to the couple. Both sides had their own matters on their minds. After exchanging some pleasantries, they were about to leave. Bai Qi and the others had just turned around when they all froze on the spot. Even the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress were no exception. 2 figures suddenly appeared on the ice cliff. Xianxia and Hong Tailong were startled when they saw Bai Qi and the others. Hong Tailong suddenly laughed wildly and said, "You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, but you'll find what you're looking for without even looking for it." I didn't expect to see us here." Hong Tailong. The 5 of them trembled and exclaimed in unison. Bai Qi was even more shocked as he said, "You're not dead yet?" Although the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress knew Xianxia, they didn't know Hong Tailong. Seeing how shocked Bai Qi and the others were, in addition to Hong Tailong's tone, the couple instantly felt that something was amiss. Hong Tailong laughed loudly and said, "What a joke. What can a mere spirit-severing smoke do to me? Bai Qi, you probably didn't expect to see me again even in your dreams. Where's Jean Tyrn? Let's settle the score today." Bai Qi suddenly turned around and looked at the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress coldly. "You 2 betrayed me?" A murderous intent appeared on his face. The couple hurriedly waved their hands and explained, "Emperor of the Underworld, you've misunderstood. Why would we betray you?" "Then how did they know I was here?" Bai Qi shouted sternly. The Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers and the other 3 also looked at the couple with murderous intent. The Snow Emperor immediately smiled bitterly at Xianxia and said, "Xianxia, why didn't you come earlier or later? Why did you come at this time? My husband and I can't even explain ourselves." Xianxia was here to exchange for the Xianming soul refining technique. How could he let anything happen to the couple? He immediately laughed harshly and said, "Bai Qi, it really has nothing to do with them. I know them and came to visit them when I was passing by. I didn't expect to see you here. You heartless bastard. You actually dared to collude with that bastard Yan Zhuixing to kill me. Today it's time to settle the score." Actually, there was no need to explain. Bai Qi was just angry for a moment. Thinking about the shocked reactions of Hong Tailong and Xianxia, they obviously didn't expect to see him here. He immediately laughed coldly and said, "With just the 2 of you?" His gaze swept around as if he was worried that someone else would appear. The silver-armored soldier brandished his halberd, the purple-armored soldier brandished his scythe, the blue-armored soldier brandished his blue bow and arrow, and the red-armored soldier loosened his grip on the red-armored soldier's red chain. The 4 of them immediately stood in a straight line on either side of the battlefield. The Snow Empress and her husband smiled bitterly. It was obvious that the Red Old Man wasn't someone to be trifled with. If the 2 groups fought, the Ice Palace would probably be destroyed. The Snow Empress gave a look to the Snow Empress and the Snow Empress left hurriedly. It was more important to protect her unconscious daughter. With this, Xianxia took out the golden heaven and earth splitting arrow and stabbed it into the icy ground in front of him. Everyone's eyes turned cold at the same time. A cold smile gradually appeared on the corner of Bai Qi's mouth and he said, "The heaven and earth splitting arrow is in your hands. Seems like the Myriad Swords Demon Lord is really dead. You scared me." It would have been fine if Bai Qi didn't mention the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. The moment Bai Qi mentioned the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, Hong Tailong immediately let out a wild roar and charged over. Bai Qi turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky, and Hong Tailong chased after him. The sky rumbled and a white figure and a red figure entangled with each other. The 2 of them directly engaged in a fierce battle. The heaven and earth splitting arrow on the icy cliff instantly exploded into tens of thousands of divine arrows, and they shot toward the 4 netherworld generals like a torrential rain. Xianxia was now extremely courageous, and he dared to take the initiative to fight the 4 netherworld generals head-on. As expected, he didn't panic because he had the goods in his hands. Reckless fellow. The Silver Armor Army's cold laughter was still reverberating, but the four of them had already teleported and disappeared from their original spots. The attacks of the tens of thousands of divine swords immediately missed. It was unknown when the silver armor army, the red armor army, and the purple armor army had appeared behind Xianxia, and they surrounded him. All of them had cold smiles on their faces, and the shadow of the halberd filled the sky. The shadow of the death god's scythe swept across Xianxia's waist, and the shadow of the red chain lashed out. With the cultivation of these three people, if Xianxia was hit by any one of them, he would immediately have to say goodbye to this world. Especially since the blue armor army in the sky had already drawn their soul-slaying bows. If Xianxia was lucky enough to escape, the soul-slaying bows would immediately teach him a lesson. Boom! The tens of thousands of divine swords all shot into the enormous icy mountain. The icy mountain shook and countless cracks appeared on it. The Snow Empress directly dove into the ice on the ground to hide. At almost the same time that the four of them disappeared, Xianxia let out a furious roar, and his entire body exploded with a ferocious seven-colored flame. In an instant it covered a radius of 1,000 meters. A ray of seven-colored light that illuminated the heaven and earth was like a resplendent pearl, blooming with gorgeous colors in the vast snowy mountain. Bai Qi, who was fighting fiercely with Hong Tailong, was already quite shocked. He actually discovered that Hong Tailong's cultivation was far stronger than before. Because he didn't know that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch had used the Divine Dragon Empowerment technique to return half of Hong Tailong's cultivation to him before he died. He didn't have the time to notice that Hong Tailong had already made the first move. In addition, Hong Tailong's dragon body, which belonged to the dragon race, was extremely resistant to attacks. He actually withstood the black light shot out by the obsidian light mirror without caring about anything else. He only attacked without defending, completely throwing caution to the wind. It was as if he was fighting with his life on the line. Bai Qi really couldn't endure his opponent's ferocious attacks. Just when Bai Qi was preparing to endure a little longer and wait for the Silver Armor Army and the other three to kill Xianxia, they would come over to help relieve the pressure on Bai Qi. Suddenly he caught a glimpse of the huge seven-colored flame blossoming below, and immediately cried out in surprise, "True Samadhi fire!" Taking advantage of Bai Qi's daze, Hong Tailong seized the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. He opened his mouth and two rays of golden light shot out. Two dragon binding chains, one bound Bai Qi's legs and the other bound his upper body. In the blink of an eye, Bai Qi was tied up tightly. No matter how hard Bai Qi struggled, he couldn't escape. Bai Qi was instantly scared out of his wits. Hong Tailong angrily shouted, "Violent dragon fist!" Countless monstrous fist shadows gathered at one point and violently smashed onto Bai Qi's body. Bai Qi couldn't even let out a scream as he violently vomited blood. Boom! A huge deep pit was formed on the vast snowy ground. Hong Tailong rushed into the deep pit on the ground and didn't stop there. True Samadhi fire! The Silver Armor Army and the other three cried out in surprise before Bai Qi. They were caught off guard and were engulfed by the exploding seven-colored flame. The blue armor heavenly soldier had his bow drawn in the air, and since he was standing a little further away, he was able to dodge the attack with instantaneous movement. However, the Silver Armor Army and the other two who attacked Bai Qi were unlucky. They repeatedly teleported to avoid the flames that were chasing after them. After much difficulty, they finally escaped the flames that were chasing after them. However, they discovered that the weapons they attacked were stained with true Samadhi fire. This true fire could refine anything. Once it was stained, it would be a huge problem. They couldn't extinguish it no matter how hard they tried. They immediately threw away their weapons without hesitation, and the three treasures became useless on the spot. Chapter 1178. The iceberg where the ice palace was located melted instantly, not into water but into steam. Wherever the true Samadhi fire reached and even further away was filled with smoke and mist. The blue-armored celestial soldier who had just fled immediately noticed Bai Qi's terrible condition. He cried out in grief, "Emperor of Netherworld!" He turned around and shot the soul-slaying arrow at Hong Tailong, who was beating Bai Qi. Xianxia was nowhere to be seen amidst the rapidly dispersing mist and the colorful flame. But suddenly Xianxia's furious roar rang out, "Kill!" Tens of thousands of golden specks of light shot out from the blazing flames, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. In order to save the Emperor of the Underworld, The blue-armored celestial soldiers who had drawn their bows and shot arrows furiously didn't care about their own lives. Instead of dodging the rain-like attacks of the divine swords, they braced themselves and turned around to shoot the arrow at Hong Tai-long. As soon as the arrow was shot out, a dozen indestructible golden light specks pierced through his body, almost turning him into a sieve. The soul-slaying bow in his hand was cut into a few pieces by the rapidly piercing divine swords, making a buzzing noise as the bowstring was broken. Tens of blood spurted out from the blue-armored celestial soldier's body. Although he tried to choke back something with a reluctant expression, he still choked out a mouthful of blood. His head tilted to one side and he fell straight down to the snowland below. Silver-armored celestial soldier and his two companions, who had hastily dodged the divine swords, turned around and saw this scene. Immediately they let out a deafening howl, "Celestial Army!" At this moment Hong Tai-long dashed out from the deep crater with a bloody man in his hand. The soul-slaying arrow brushed past his shoulder. Boom! The ground shook and the snowland cracked. The colorful flame covering 1,000 meters on the snowland shrank rapidly, and a man made of fire dashed out. Behind him, tens of thousands of golden light specks circled like a shoal of fish in the ocean. Hong Tai-long carried Bai Qi, who was already on the verge of death, his white clothes dyed in blood, and was still tightly bound by the dragon-binding rope. He flashed to Yu Qianchou's side, handed him over and said, "Take him, I've already sealed his cultivation." Then he turned to look at the three dumbfounded people in the distance and sneered, "Leave those three fellows who helped the evildoer to me." Yu Qianchou retracted his true samadhi fire and reached out to grab the dragon-binding rope. He looked coldly at Bai Qi, who was beaten up beyond recognition, and casually lifted him up. He wouldn't have the slightest bit of sympathy for him. This was a life-and-death battle. If he lost today, his ending wouldn't be any better. Other than death, they might even hand him over to Yan Zhuixing. That was why it was said that showing mercy to the enemy was equivalent to committing suicide. "Wait!" Yu Qianchou called out to Hong Tai-long. His eyes narrowed as he swept a glance at the three people in the distance. He felt a little strange in his heart. If the three of them had split up and fled, Hong Tai-long might not have been able to capture all of them. It would already be good if he could capture two of them. However, the three of them did not flee. Instead, they were looking at him with grief and indignation. Hong Tai-long looked at him in confusion and asked, "Are we going to let them go?" Yu Qianchou didn't reply to him. He stretched out his other hand and a divine sword flashed into his hand. He placed the sword on Bai Qi's neck expressionlessly and shouted at the three people, "If anyone dares to flee, I will immediately cut off his head. If you don't want him to die, then obediently surrender. I can consider letting you guys live." "No." Hong Tai-long roared angrily, "I can let them go, but he must die." He pointed his finger at Bai Qi. From the looks of it, he still held a grudge against Yi Tiankong. "Why don't I hand him over to you and you can do whatever you want to do? After you're done, you can go back to your hometown and I'll go do my own thing. From now on, we won't have anything to do with each other?" Yu Qianchou looked at him and sneered. Hong Tai-long clenched his fists tightly and angrily turned his head away. "Yu Qianchou, you have to keep your word." The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers' sorrowful voice came from afar. "I, Yu Qianchou, am famous for being a man of my word. What I say is already set in stone. Have you ever heard of me, Yu Qianchou, going back on my word?" Yu Qianchou grabbed Bai Qi and placed the sword on his neck. He shouted back, "As long as you guys answer my questions honestly and promise to serve me from now on, I can let you guys go." The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers and the other two looked at each other with a bitter smile, then nodded in unison and slowly flew over. Yu Qianchou tilted his head and said, "Hong Tai-long, go seal their cultivation bases." Seeing the three flying over, Bai Qi's eyes, which had already lost focus, once again lit up. His chest, which had almost been smashed, suddenly heaved up and down, and a large mouthful of blocked blood spurted out of his mouth. Staring at the three flying over with bloodshot eyes, he desperately roared in pain, "Run! Run! Don't worry about me. Don't believe his nonsense. Hurry up and go. I beg you guys." Yu Qianchou didn't stop Bai Qi from shouting. He pretended to be merciful to the three people. The three people looked at Bai Qi's pitiful appearance. Who could have imagined that the Emperor of the Underworld, who was so graceful in the Underworld Royal Palace, would end up like this? The three men who were made of iron instantly burst into tears. They stubbornly shook their heads and refused. It was the first time in their lives that they refused the Emperor of the Underworld's command. They didn't expect it to be under such circumstances. The three people didn't leave. Instead they sped up and flew over. Bai Qi's face instantly swelled and tears of blood came out of his eyes. He screamed in pain, "Don't come over." His voice was so miserable that it was like a ghost being thrown into a pot of boiling oil. Originally Hong Tailong hated Bai Qi to the bone. However, when he saw that Bai Qi was willing to give up his only hope of survival for the sake of his subordinates, he could not help but be moved. He cast a deep look at Bai Qi, who was crying tears of blood, and teleported to the front of Silver Armor Army and the other two without any hesitation. With a lightning-fast move he quickly sealed their cultivations and brought them over. Seeing that the situation was under control, Xianxia waved his hand and put away the 10,000 swords as one. He carried Bai Qi, who was badly mutilated, and landed on the ice field and threw him to the ground. Hong Tailong also threw the three people to the ground. The three people climbed up and wanted to help Bai Qi, who was still being helped. However, their cultivation was sealed and they couldn't help Bai Qi, who was weighed down by the dragon binding rope. They fell down one by one, climbed up one by one, and fell down one by one. At this moment the ice mountain that the ice palace was built on had melted. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress, who had hidden far away, also came back. The Snow Empress was still carrying her unconscious daughter. The two of them were also frightened by the fierce battle, but Xianxia's true Samadhi fire attracted them. Once the battle ended they immediately rushed back. They saw hope to save their daughter because Xianxia had promised them. "Let him go. We have already stretched out our necks to be killed. You have already sealed his cultivation, why don't you let him go?" The Silver Armor Army roared at Hong Tailong. "Even if you want to kill him, there is no need to treat him like this. He was once the supreme emperor of the Netherworld and he has his own dignity. At least when the Myriad Swords Demon Lord died, no one humiliated him." The three people were really powerless to help Bai Qi up. Without their cultivation the ice under their feet was slippery. There was no expression on Hong Tailong's face. For some unknown reason he actually opened his mouth and swallowed the dragon binding rope that was binding Bai Qi back into his stomach. Without the weight of the dragon binding rope, Bai Qi choked out another mouthful of blood when the three people helped him up. He looked at the three people and shook his head with boundless grief and indignation. "Why are you all so stupid? We have no value to him now. Do you all really think that he will let us go? We know that there is no way out." The Purple Armor Army suddenly laughed bitterly and said, "But we are already used to going through life and death with you. We have been like this for so many years. Moreover, all of our lives were saved by you. You have never let us down and you have always treated us well. How can we bear to leave you behind?" Bai Qi closed his eyes and tears of blood flowed out from his eyes. Suddenly he opened his eyes angrily and tilted his head to look at Xianxia. He gritted his teeth and said, "Xianxia, what will make you let them go?" Xianxia looked at him coldly and didn't answer his question. Instead he said indifferently, "Actually, before you attacked me that time, I didn't have any ill will towards you. I just don't understand. Could it be that just because Mu Yuanzi injured you, you're going to open the demon world and let all the beings of the three realms die with you?" Bai Qi's struggling body softened, and he lay in the arms of the Silver Armor Army of 1,000 soldiers. He laughed wildly and said, "Why? I also want to know why. I once led my subordinates to risk their lives for the sake of all living beings in the three realms. I risked my life to seal the demon realm with King Jintai. For the sake of all living beings in the three realms, I've always suppressed Kim Tae and prevented him from acting recklessly. For so many years I've always warned Kim Tae that if he dared to disturb the balance of the three realms, I would lead the heroes of the Netherworld to beat him up. Otherwise, do you think that inhumane fellow would really treat everyone in the world as humans? Let me ask you, who has ever heard of the three realms not being in chaos for 100,000 years? But why?" Bai Qi retorted angrily, "Why do I have to bear the retribution for Master Jin's evil deed of killing the entire Wu family? Why did Mu Yuanzi injure me instead of dealing with the main culprit? Why do all the beings in the three realms turn against me when I'm working for the welfare of the three realms? Not a single person, not even a single person stood out to speak for me. Since the entire world is filled with heartless people, if I don't see rivers of heartless people's blood flow, why should I live in sorrow? Why should I die in sorrow? Then let me tell you why. Because there is no why. No matter how good you think you are, it's all because you think you are. Everything is retribution. If you can't figure it out, you can slowly think about it in your next life. Xianxia said as he took out a divine sword. Hong Tailong was slightly startled. Didn't you want to let him go? Why does it look like you want to kill me? Little did he know that Xianxia and the Silver Armor Army of 1,000 soldiers were negotiating terms because he didn't want to leave behind any future troubles that might suddenly pop up one day to take revenge. Thus, he purposely led the three of them to surrender so that they wouldn't slip through the net. To him, if he didn't kill a single one and let them all go, then he would be a good person. Since he was going to kill them, he would have to eliminate them completely. Moreover, Bai Qi was already a member of the Devil Dao. He had once sworn to the heavens at the 1,000-mile lake that he would exterminate the Devil Dao and sacrifice all living beings in the demon domain. Chapter 1179. Right at this moment, the Snow Empress suddenly flashed over. She braced herself and cupped her hands with a bitter smile. I know you want the Xianming soul refining technique. If you let go of the Emperor of the Underworld, I am willing to give it to you. The Snow Empress, who was carrying Shui Linglong, looked at them worriedly. She was afraid that her husband had angered Xianxia. After all, Hong Tailong and Xianxia were very powerful, especially Xianxia's Samadhi True Fire, which was the nemesis of the couple's cultivation method. More importantly, she was afraid that angering Xianxia would mean giving up the chance to cure her daughter. However, they were indebted to Bai Qi. Although she felt uncomfortable holding back some words, she couldn't say them out loud. Xianxia glanced at the couple, then slowly raised the divine sword in his hand and gently caressed the glowing edge of the sword. Snow Emperor, we had an agreement. I saved your daughter's life, and you gave me the Xianming soul refining technique in exchange. Now you want to use it to exchange for Bai Qi's life. You better think carefully. The Xianming soul refining technique can only exchange for one person's life. Whether it is Bai Qi or your daughter, it's up to you. The Snow Emperor lowered his head solemnly. The Snow Empress looked at her daughter in her arms, then at her husband, her face full of anxiety. Bai Qi struggled for a while and the three understood and helped him up. Facing the Snow Emperor, Bai Qi was very gratified and nodded. I appreciate Brother Snow's righteousness. With Brother Snow's words, I can die without regrets. My friendship with Brother Snow was not in vain. However, the four of us are destined to live and die together today. I will not live alone or it will be worse than death. So, please don't interfere in this matter. This has nothing to do with you and your wife. Emperor of the Underworld. The Snow Emperor wanted to say something, but Bai Qi had already turned to look at Xianxia, who was ignoring him, and sighed, I didn't expect this. Xianxia, who didn't even dare to speak loudly in front of me, was now in control of my life and death. It seems that the Saintess is indeed a prophet. I had already vaguely figured out some of it, but in the end I still made a mistake. I can't blame others for my fate. You're right, everything is retribution. Netherworld Saintess? Xianxia raised his eyebrows and lowered the sword in his hand. He tilted his head and asked, She told you about me? A bitter smile appeared on Bai Qi's bloody face and his eyes became blurry. He recalled the conversation he had with the Underworld Saintess in the small courtyard of the Dark Royal Palace. He closed his eyes slightly and said, Xianxia. Back then I wanted to kill you first. Killing me today is my retribution. However, I treated you well back then. Promise me one thing. Xianxia frowned and said faintly, Let's hear it first. Now that things had come to this, he wouldn't give in so easily. A warm expression appeared on Bai Qi's face as he said, Don't let the news of my death spread. That's all I want. Xianxia was startled. He asked with some surprise, You're already dead, yet you still care about the waves behind you. I want to know why. Is it worth it for me to promise you? Wan Ling's figure appeared in Bai Qi's mind. He had protected the entire 10,000 holy palace from the Demon King 3 nights. After rescuing Wan Ling, he and Wan Ling had an intimate time together. When they parted, he had said that he would come back to pick her up after finishing his business. Who would have thought that it would be an eternal farewell? He let out a soft sigh and closed his eyes as he replied, If she doesn't know that I'm dead, she will naturally live on. I have nothing left for her. The only thing I can give her now is to give her the hope to live on. Everyone else was confused, but Xianxia seemed to be deep in thought. He had already linked it to Wan Ling. He paused and said, I can promise you this. I originally wanted to use the Xianming soul refining technique to refine you all into profound weapons. As you said, on account of the kindness you have shown me, I will give the 4 of you a quick death. From now on, the grudges between us will be resolved and we will not owe each other anything." As soon as he finished speaking, a golden light flashed in his hand. With 4 piu-piu sounds, 4 heads bounced up and fell to the ground. Warm blood spurted out from their mouths. The 4 corpses fell to the ground and twitched for a while before they stopped moving. The blood that flowed out from the severed heads quickly solidified on the icy ground. Hong Tai Long looked at Yu Qianzhou as he silently put away the divine sword in his hand. Previously he had thought that he would let them go. He didn't expect that he would not leave a single one alive. Hong Tai Long wanted to say something but he didn't know what to say. The Snow Empress and her husband looked at Bai Qi's corpse dumbfoundedly. Suddenly, a ball of 7-colored flames swept across, and there was nothing left on the ground. Even the blood had turned into ashes. Yu Qianzhou turned around and walked towards the husband and wife. He stopped in front of the Snow Empress who was carrying Shui Linglong and said indifferently, "Snow Empress, I have always remembered the promise I made in the past. Today I have come to fulfill it." He stretched out his 5 claws and grabbed towards Shui Linglong. Not long after, a strand of 7-colored flame that was not much thicker than a strand of hair emerged from Shui Linglong's body. It was this little fellow that caused the Snow Empress and her husband to be helpless even with all their efforts. That strand of flame drilled into Yu Qianzhou's palm. Shui Linglong, who was still unconscious, let out a soft moan. Her body that was being carried moved slightly, and the sickly redness on her cheeks gradually disappeared. The husband and wife looked at their daughter who was recovering quickly, but they didn't feel the slightest bit happy. The Snow Empress raised her head and saw that Yu Qianzhou was staring at her with a burning gaze. She couldn't help but smile bitterly and shake her head. She took out a jade archive and quickly inserted something into it, then flicked it out. Yu Qianzhou casually caught the jade archive and examined it. After thinking for a long time, he nodded slightly and said, "So that's how it is. I understand now." The jade archive was immediately crushed into pieces. In fact, the Xianming soul refining technique wasn't a technique that required a large amount of time to practice. It was a technique that condensed all of the opponent's cultivation into the essence of the technique and used it. It required a spiritual object that was connected to the user so that the user could control it. No matter what type of spiritual object was used, the user would need the same type as the medium to unleash its power. This was the reason why the Snow Empress said that Yu Qianzhou couldn't practice without absorbing the fire spirit. After understanding the secret of the Xianming soul refining technique, Yu Qianzhou was confident that he could use it on the 5 elements of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had to swallow all 5 spirits of heaven and earth. The Snow Empress would never have imagined that Yu Qianzhou had mastered all 5 elements of the technique. This was also the reason why Yu Qianzhou was so interested in the Xianming soul refining technique. As long as he mastered it, he would be able to summon an almost unkillable dark soldier in any terrain in the future. The Snow Empress and her husband didn't have anything to be happy about when their daughter's worries were resolved. They held their daughter and left with flagging interest. Now that the ice palace was destroyed, they suffered a great loss. The ice soul, mysterious ice, which was refined by many experts, was destroyed by Yu Qianzhou's Samadhi true fire. But they didn't say anything and left. They wanted to find a suitable place to rebuild the ice palace in the snowy mountain. After today's scene, they saw Yu Qianzhou's ruthlessness. It was hard for them, who had always been aloof from worldly affairs, to accept it. They probably didn't want to have anything to do with Yu Qianzhou anymore. At least in their opinion, Bai Qi was much more affectionate and righteous. Yu Qianzhou stood silently on the ice field and watched the couple leave. He stood for a long time in the howling cold wind. After a long time he looked up at the dark night sky and sighed. "I thought I would become friends with them, but I knew it was impossible when I decided to kill Bai Qi. All these years, in order to do some things, I gained a lot, but I also lost too many precious things. What is the most precious? The human heart is the most precious. The people I was familiar with left me one by one. Some died, some left, and there's no turning back. Maybe when I gain more I will also lose more." Hong Tailong also couldn't accept the fact that he killed Bai Qi and the other 3 people. Although he was the one who shouted the loudest to kill Bai Qi, after hearing Yu Qianzhou's sigh he seemed to understand his helplessness. After all, which person didn't have a story behind them? Everyone had been honest before, and maybe everyone had a touching story. But this was a life and death cultivation. There was more than one person like Bai Qi in the world, who could carry so many burdens on their shoulders. If they didn't get rid of them quickly, there would only be more and more burdens and nothing could be done. Just as Hong Tailong was about to say a few words of consolation, he discovered that Yu Qianzhou took a deep breath and became spirited again. He immediately came back to life from his loneliness and disappeared in a flash. His recovery speed was too fast. It was as if he was a completely different person, as if nothing had happened earlier. After Yu Qianzhou searched around the icy plains, he found Bai Qi's treasure, the obsidian underworld light mirror. He tried to control it but discovered that it was impervious to fire and water. Even his divine sense couldn't penetrate it. It seemed like there was no possibility for him to control it. Hong Tailong flashed to his side and sneered, "Don't try anymore. The obsidian underworld light mirror is the symbol of the netherworld's supreme ruler. Other than meditation cultivators, no one from the outside world is able to control it." "There's such a strange thing?" Yu Qianzhou flipped it around and looked at it. Then he put it away with some regret. This thing could communicate with each other through a video call. It was a pity that he couldn't use such a high-grade treasure. "Where should we go now? To sweep across the demonic path's army in the netherworld, or to slaughter in the immortal realm?" Hong Tailong rubbed his palms together. He couldn't wait to prove to the three realms that he, Hong Tailong, had returned. Yu Qianzhou lowered his head and calculated for a while. He muttered to himself, "Looking at the time, it's about time. I wonder if that fellow Xin Yu will keep his promise." Then he suddenly raised his head and said, "My master doesn't know about the human realm being sealed. I want to report to him first." "Your master? Where?" Hong Tailong was stunned. Yu Qianzhou had already waved his hand, and the two of them disappeared from where they stood. By the netherworld river beside the myriad heavens boundary barrier, the two of them appeared. Hong Tailong quickly looked around and asked hesitantly, "This is... You're finally here?" A woman's clear voice rang out. The two of them looked at the other side of the river. The netherworld saintess slowly walked out from the ground. It seemed like she had opened up an underground space for herself. Hong Tailong was a little surprised and wanted to ask, "Is this your master?" Yu Qianzhou was also a little surprised as he asked, "Why are you here?" Chapter 1180. However, what surprised him even more was that Xin Yu also walked out of the cave, smiled awkwardly at him and curiously looked at Hong Tailong. Then he flew over with the underworld saintess. Seeing that Xin Yu kept his promise, Yu Qianzhou was relieved, but he was a little puzzled as to why the two of them were together. He couldn't help but ask, "Why are you two together?" Xin Yu said embarrassedly, "I came here a few days in advance to wait for you. Who knew that I would also meet Miss Xian here, so we waited for you here together." "Zhou Xian is also waiting for me?" Could it be that her ability to predict the future had reached such a level? Or is it a coincidence? Just as Yu Qianzhou showed some doubts on his face, Zhou Xian, whose face was covered with a black veil, suddenly sighed faintly and asked, "You really came here? In that case, Bai Qi didn't escape the calamity after all." Hong Tailong, who was already confused, was even more puzzled. The two of them came here in the blink of an eye. How did she know that Bai Qi had encountered a calamity? Yu Qianzhou didn't dare to underestimate her. He had a deeper understanding of this woman's divine foresight. However, because he had promised Bai Qi not to leak the news that he was dead, a confused look appeared on his face as he asked, "What do you mean Bai Qi didn't escape the calamity? What happened to Bai Qi?" Hong Tailong immediately turned his head and rolled his eyes. Zhou Xian looked deeply at Yu Qianzhou and shook his head slightly. "Bai Qi and I were friends and I couldn't bear to see him suffer a tragedy. I originally wanted him to use you to defy the heavens and change his fate. I also thought that he understood. Now it seems that the two of you didn't get along after all. It's really hard to defy the heavens' will." Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered. He wanted to say something but hesitated for a while. In the end he still said with a blank look, "What do you mean? Why don't I understand?" Zhou Xian saw that he was deliberately acting dumb, so he didn't linger on this topic. He quietly turned around and said, "I have been waiting for you here for a long time. Since you want to go inside the celestial boundary, why don't we go together?" "What? The celestial barrier of the mausoleum of the gods?" Hong Tailong looked around in shock. while Yu Qianchou glanced at Xingyu meaningfully as if he was asking, "Did you say that?" Feeling guilty, Jiuyu turned around and flashed into the river. He transformed into a giant clam and opened his shell to wait for the three of them to come in. Zhou Xian was the first to enter in a flash, followed by Yu Qianchou. Hong Tailong still had a shocked expression on his face as he glanced left and right before following behind them. The huge clamshell closed up, and it quickly swam upstream in the Netherworld River. When the few of them came out of the clamshell again, they had already arrived at the cliff within the boundary of all heavens. Hong Tailong stared at the huge moon with his mouth agape. Zhou Xian seemed a little excited to return to this place. He didn't greet the crowd and immediately flew in the direction of his home. Yu Qianchou took out a flying shuttle and let Hong Tailong drive it. He brought along Jiuyu and caught up with Zhou Xian in the blink of an eye. They carried her and quickly disappeared into the distance. When they arrived at the small courtyard on the monster-like mountain, Zhou Xian couldn't wait any longer and flashed down. White-haired Grandma Yen walked out of the house and saw her. She immediately called out with a trembling voice, "Little Xian." Zhou Xian quickly walked over and knelt down on the spot. She hugged Grandma Yan's leg and cried, "Grandma, Xianer is back." After Grandma Yen helped her up and checked on her, the two of them hugged each other and cried. As they cried, they asked each other something and completely ignored the three people who walked in after them. After a long while, the two women who looked like a grandparent and granddaughter finally stopped crying. When Grandma Yen saw Yu Qianchou, she wiped her tears and let go of Zhou Xian. She walked to him and bowed, "Yu Qianchou, this old woman thanks you." She was thanking him for bringing back Zhou Xian who had disappeared for so many years. "You can't do that." Yu Qianchou hurriedly held her. Grandma Yen didn't stand on ceremony. She pulled his hand and led him into the house. She then waved at the other two people and said, "Come in, come in, come in, everyone come in." "Grandma Yen, you don't have to be so polite." Yu Qianchou persuaded her and said seriously, "I still have something to do so I won't disturb you this time. I'll visit Grandma next time." He suddenly thought of something and asked respectfully, "By the way, Grandma, have you heard any news about my master recently?" Hong Tailong's ears pricked up. He looked at Yu Qianchou with a stunned expression and pondered in his heart. Could this guy's master be in the mausoleum of the god of sin? "Your master?" Grandma Yen was also stunned. Then she came to a sudden realization and said, "You're asking about that green-robed madman, right?" Yu Qianchou's expression twitched. The so-called green-robed madman shouldn't be anyone else. He then coughed dryly and said, "From what Grandma said, you seem to have news about my master?" Grandma Yen also felt that her choice of words was a little inappropriate, but she still frowned and nodded with a solemn expression. She said, "I do know, but you must not let the others here know that he is your master. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will bring you trouble." Yu Qianchou's expression twitched again. He guessed that the old man had done something that angered the heavens and the people again. So he asked weakly, "Grandma, can you explain it clearly? What exactly happened?" Sigh. Grandma Yen sighed and shook her head. She said, "Your master killed old man Meng. That's not all. He provoked the other tomb guards one after another. As a result, many of them were angered by him. So, more than 100 of them joined forces and finally beat him up until he was seriously injured. Who knew that after he escaped into the boundary of heavens to recuperate, he would not stop. After he came out, he killed 60 to 70 minor god-level cultivators in a row. Dozens of them were seriously injured and luckily escaped with their lives. In the end, a tomb guard with the cultivation of an early-stage great god was alarmed. He and your master fought fiercely for a day and a night. In the end, the two of them were evenly matched. Both of them were seriously injured and had to retreat. Your master has not come out to cause trouble for a long time. He has been recuperating in the boundary of heavens. Although everyone can see him, they can't break into the boundary of heavens. So they can't do anything to him." Yu Qianchou was speechless for a while. He realized that the old man was getting more and more reckless. He dared to challenge a group of god-level experts alone. Was it fun to be seriously injured for no reason? It was simply unreasonable. The others were also speechless. After the shock, Zhou Xian's eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Xingyu seemed to have heard of this before. He was speechless. Hong Tailong looked at Yu Qianchou as if he was looking at a monster. Never in his dreams would he have thought that Yu Qianqiu had such an awesome master. Grandma Yen paused for a while and smiled bitterly. Now the people in the cemetery of the God of Tombs are in a state of panic because of your master. No one knows when he will come out to cause trouble again. Everyone is spreading the news, hoping to unite to deal with your master. Back then, if it wasn't for last Xian who divined for me and told me not to get involved in the matters outside, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape from your master's hands. I just don't understand. What is your master trying to do? Everyone here is a group of people who stand aloof from worldly affairs. Why would he want to disturb the peace here? No one is provoking him. That, Yu Qianqiu blushed with shame. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "There's something wrong with the old man's head. Don't lower yourself to his level." Grandma Yen immediately said angrily, "Who wants to lower themselves to his level? We really don't want to lower ourselves to his level and we can't wait to stay away from him. But he insisted on coming to our door and we can't leave the cemetery of the God of Tombs. What do you want us to do?" Yu Qianqiu also smiled bitterly. The old man was still resolutely striving for a higher and stronger goal. It seemed that he had never wavered in that thought. Yu Qianqiu didn't know what to say. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Zhou Xian immediately came forward to resolve it. "Grandma, I want to pay my respects to Father and Grandfather Moon God." Grandma Yen glanced at her and understood what she was thinking. She didn't linger on this topic anymore. She shook her head and walked out with the help of Zhou Xian. "Ahem. Since they are elders I should pay my respects." Yu Qianqiu followed out with some guilt. Then he cursed in his heart. "Damn it. I didn't do the wicked things that the old man did. Why should I feel guilty?" Hong Tailong and Shen Yu looked at each other and followed out. In front of the tombs of Taishu Zheng and the moon god, Zhou Xian knelt down and kowtowed sincerely. He was even muttering something. Yu Qianqiu bowed repeatedly to the tombstones. Shen Yu followed suit. Hong Tailong crossed his arms and followed suit. Taishu Zheng didn't know who it was. When he saw the tomb of the moon god he muttered, "So the moon god is buried here too." Grandma Yen saw that he was being disrespectful and naturally couldn't stand it. But when she realized that she couldn't see through his cultivation, she couldn't help but mock. "Do you know my husband?" Hong Tailong turned around and was stunned. After he reacted he said disapprovingly, "The moon god. I heard of him when I was in the divine realm." Grandma Yen was stunned. She glanced at them and asked in confusion, "You are also from the divine realm? Why haven't I seen you before? May I know your name?" She mistakenly thought that Hong Tailong was a tomb guard in the divine tomb cemetery. "It's not strange that you haven't seen me before." Hong Tailong revealed a normal expression and said, "I, Hong Tailong, am a nobody in the dragon clan. I have never made a name for myself in the divine realm. It's normal that we haven't seen each other." "You are from the dragon clan?" Grandma Yen looked at him in surprise as if she couldn't believe it. Just as she was about to ask again she saw Hong Tailong casually walking to the front of the huge grave mound. He caressed the dark red crystals that formed the grave mound and said, "It is said that as long as the corpse of the person buried in the blood jade red crystals is intact, his cultivation and corpse can be maintained. At the same time the blood jade red crystals can absorb the essence of the moon and condense the dead soul. When the time is right the dead can be resurrected. This is also the reason why people in the divine realm fight to be buried in the divine tomb cemetery. I wonder if it's true?" Grandma Yen was already annoyed by his rude behavior. Yu Qianqiu glanced at her and quickly pulled Hong Tailong away to stop him from carelessly touching the grave mound. Then he pulled Shen Yu along and the three of them bid farewell to Grandma Yen. Grandma Yen nodded unhappily. She didn't say any polite words and let the three of them leave. Chapter 1181. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Hong Tailong, who was on the rapidly flying shuttle, was also somewhat unhappy. He could also tell that Grandma Yen wasn't very fond of him. He coldly snorted at Yu Qianqiu. "Why are you afraid of her? She's no match for me with her cultivation." "You think you're right." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. "Respect the dead. If you don't put her in your eyes she didn't offend you. Why did you have to touch her grave? No one would be happy. Do I, a dragon, have to kneel and kowtow to her family's dead?" Hong Tailong waved his hand disdainfully and continued to steer his flying shuttle. Suddenly he turned around and sneered, "I understand. You're afraid that you'll be implicated by your master's troubles. You're afraid that she'll be unhappy and expose your identity, right? Don't talk about useless things. Xianxia snorted. He crossed his arms and rubbed his chin, thinking about something. The expression on his face was somewhat strange. Suddenly he looked at Hong Tailong with a strange gaze and said, "Let me ask you, you said that as long as the corpses of the dead are intact, they can maintain their cultivation. Is that true?" "I don't know if it's true, but that's what I've heard in the divine realm. However, I've never heard of anyone being resurrected, so I'm not sure. Why are you interested in this? Do you also want to be buried in?" Hong Tailong's voice paused and his body suddenly trembled. He turned around and exclaimed in shock, "Could it be that you want to use the Shenming soul refining technique too?" He glanced at Xinyu and swallowed his words. He still didn't know how close this Xinyu fellow was to Yu Qianqiu, and there were some things that he couldn't let him know. However, Yu Qianqiu nodded thoughtfully and said, "If his cultivation really hasn't dissipated, I wonder if it's been too long since he died. Is there any use in using the Shenming soul refining technique?" Hong Tailong's eyes flickered as he swept his gaze across his surroundings. He was a little excited as he chuckled, "Do you want to give it a try?" He seemed to be searching for a target. Xinyu looked at the two of them in confusion. He didn't know what they were talking about, but his instincts told him that they were up to no good. At that moment, the flying shuttle arrived above the tomb that Old Man Meng had been guarding. The ground was full of potholes as if an interstellar war had taken place. However, the dark red crystal tomb was still there. Hong Tailong winked at Yu Qianqiu and gestured at the grave below. Yu Qianqiu immediately had a look of disdain on his face. Looking at this old fellow's character, he must have done a lot of good things with Yi Tiangkong back then. "I'm not in the mood for this right now. Let's go to the edge of the all-celestial boundary and see how my master is doing," said Yu Qianqiu as he pointed forward. "All right. We'll talk about it when we get back." Hong Tailong chuckled as if he was very interested in being a thief. He forgot about the dignity of the dragon race and flew away on the flying shuttle. The flying shuttle soon arrived at the edge of the all-celestial boundary. Who knew that just as it approached, someone would shout, "Who is it?" Suddenly, 3 people descended from the sky, forming a triangle around the flying shuttle. Hong Tailong's gaze swept over the 3 people and his pupils shrank slightly. He discovered that he could not see through the cultivation of these 3 people. They were clearly higher than him. Yu Qianqiu knew that they had encountered an expert when he saw Hong Tailong's expression. He quickly cupped his fists at the 3 and said with a smile, "We heard that someone is doing evil here, so we came here to see which madman has the guts to do so." The 3 of them turned a deaf ear to his words. Their gazes were fixed on Hong Tailong as they looked at each other in disbelief. After a long while, one of them asked in bewilderment, "You're from the dragon race?" The 3 of them had a higher cultivation than Hong Tailong, so they could see through Hong Tailong's true form. "Can't I?" Hong Tailong shouted with an imposing manner. "I heard that someone is doing evil here. I came here to investigate. Could it be that you are trying to stop me?" "So it's the dragon race's emissary." The 3 of them mistook Hong Tailong as an emissary sent by the dragon race. They bowed and greeted him. The person who answered earlier even explained to Hong Tailong respectfully, "There is indeed a madman doing evil here. He is inside the all-celestial boundary ahead. Emissary, please report back to Great Coiling Dragon God as soon as possible and eliminate this person." "Led me there." Hong Tailong pointed at Hong Tailong and put on airs. The 3 of them immediately led the way. Yu Qianqiu looked at Hong Tailong with a disgusted expression. He was even more certain that this old fellow must have done many bad things in the past. After arriving at their destination, the group stood at the edge of the transverse cliff. The person who answered earlier waved his hand and pointed into the darkness ahead. "Emissary, please look. That person is right there." Yu Qianqiu and the others looked in the direction he pointed. In the void not too far away, Bai Changchun was quietly floating there in his green robe. His eyes were closed and his brows were drooping. He was motionless like a statue. Golden arcs of light constantly flickered around his body. They either flew out of his body in complicated trajectories or entered his body in an ethereal manner. The golden arcs of light were constantly moving in and out of his body. No one knew what they were doing. Hong Tailong glanced at Yu Qianqiu. From his expression he confirmed that it was his master. He suddenly shouted, "Hey! Who is doing evil here? Quickly report your name. It's useless. The person who guided them shook his head and explained, the all-celestial boundary isolates everything. He can't hear our voices at all. We also don't know when he will wake up and we can't go over either. Sigh. This person is very strange. I don't know what method he used to hide in the all-celestial boundary. I'm afraid Emissary Dragon will have to report back to Great Coiling Dragon God before he can make a decision. We can't contact your master. What should we do? Hong Tailong secretly transmitted his voice. Xianxia was also helpless. He said in the dark, forget it. Let's focus on our own matters first. Hong Tailong then said to the other three with a stern expression, I know what to do. I will go back and report back now. The three quickly offered to send him off, but Hong Tailong rejected them. He drove the flying shuttle again and left with Xianxia and Xinyu. After watching them leave, one of them expressed doubt. Why do I feel that this emissary dragon is a little strange? He actually brought two people with such shallow cultivation with him, and he even drove the flying shuttle himself. Do you think he might be an imposter? Another person shook his head and said, why do you care so much? There's no doubt that he's a dragon. It's even more impossible for him to be an imposter. If he wasn't here on imperial orders, he wouldn't have been able to break through the all-celestial boundary. Besides, have you ever heard of a dragon daring to impersonate Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy? As they were discussing, Hong Tailong, who had flown far away, suddenly turned around on the flying shuttle. He put his hands on Xianxia's shoulders and said with a trembling voice, if the matter of me impersonating Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy gets out, you have to help me explain to Great Coiling Dragon God. I'm only impersonating him so that you can meet your master. Alright, I know. Xianxia pushed his hands away and said nonchalantly, what's there to be afraid of? You didn't lie. You're Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy. Don't think too much. Stop there and we'll do our own things. Xinyu had been listening to the conversation between the two in bewilderment. Why did it involve Great Coiling Dragon God again? He felt that things were getting out of hand. He didn't know if following these two fellows was a blessing or a curse. Hong Tailong sighed and turned around. He thought to himself, I'm afraid my time as an envoy has long expired. Not long after, the three of them returned to the sky above the lonely tomb. Hong Tailong looked around and made sure that there was no one around. He quickly put away the flying shuttle and the three of them landed in front of the tombstone. There were words on the tombstone. Hong Hua Star Monarch. I've heard of this person. He's a member of the Light Ancient God clan. I think he's a late-stage great god. However, he fell when the demon god wreaked havoc in the divine realm. I didn't expect him to be buried here. Hong Tailong nodded as he looked at the tombstone. His surname is Hong just like yours. Xianxia teased. Hong Tailong was about to retort when he saw Xianxia lightly stomp his feet. The three of them immediately sank into the ground. Then the ground above them closed up again, blocking the bright moonlight. Hong Tailong couldn't help but shake his head. This guy really knew the earth elemental art. Meanwhile, Xianxia used the earth elemental art to sense the depth of the tomb. After diving down to a depth of 10 meters, he suddenly pointed with his finger. The soil in front of him parted, and a large hole appeared on the wall made of blood jade and red crystals. Immediately, a faint red light could be seen moving gently in front of him. Xianxia looked at it warily. He stepped aside to make way and said, there's no danger in there, right? Hong Tailong was speechless. He knew that this guy meant for him to go in and check first. He strode in and walked around. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he shouted, come in. It's fine. Xianxia then swaggered in while Xinyu followed behind him in fear. He realized that every time he followed Xianxia had to do some unimaginable and scary things. The space inside the tomb was not small and the lighting was good. The entire tomb's walls and floor were made of blood jade red crystals. Strands of red light shone down from the blood jade red crystals on the ceiling. They formed a fan shape and focused on a corpse in the center. It was a man's corpse, and he was also lying on a long bed made of blood jade red crystals. Xianxia and Xinyu were still looking around, but Hong Tailong was already at the side of the long bed, trying to touch the corpse on it. Xinyu didn't dare to move. Xianxia walked over to take a look. The man's corpse had a goat-like beard and a serene expression. It was as if he was sleeping and he didn't look like a dead person at all. Xianxia couldn't help but curiously poke his head over and asked, what are you doing? Hong Tai-long pinched open the man's mouth and peeked inside. He then opened the eyelids to take a look. Then he clapped his hands and said with a curious expression, "The corpse is actually soft. There's a piercing wound in his heart, but I can see that the original wound was even bigger. It's obviously healing at an extremely slow speed. It seems that the legend about the mausoleum of the god of sin is true. There might really be a possibility of resurrection. If you don't believe me, come and touch it." He pointed at the corpse on the long bed to Xianxia. Chapter 1182. Motherf ***. I'm not as perverted as you. I've never had the hobby of touching corpses. Moreover, it's a corpse that has been dead for God knows how many years. How could you do it? Xianxia spat in disgust. He had seen enough of the corpse's disgusting actions. However, he still couldn't help but poke it a few times to see if it was real or fake. Finding that it really was soft, he couldn't help but pinch the corpse's arm. He coughed and pulled his hand back. I'm more concerned about how his cultivation base is preserved. The two stood in front of the corpse that had been dead for God knows how many years and chatted. They even touched each other. Zhou subconsciously looked around and felt extremely horrified. Can you not always say one thing but mean another? Hong Tai-long spat back. He then went straight to the point. Without giving Zhou a chance to refute, he said, "His cultivation seems to have been damaged. I heard that Hong Hua Star Lord was a late-stage great god back then. Now he's only a mid-stage great god. Try and see if you can use it." What were these two guys trying to do? Zhou stared at the two people who had their backs to him surrounding the corpse. Middle-stage great god. It's enough, it's enough. Xianxia glanced at the entire corpse with a beaming smile on his face. Then he patted Hong Tai-long's chest with the back of his hand, hinting him to step aside. Then he circled around the long couch twice. No one knew what he was thinking, but he shook his head again and again. Suddenly, he waved his hand and a seven-colored flame enveloped the entire corpse. Then he closed his eyes and remained motionless. It was Xin Yu's first time seeing the seven-colored flame and he was shocked. The flame that covered the corpse slowly melted under his claws until it became a ball floating in the air. There was a layer of grayish-white human-shaped ashes on the long bed of blood jade and red crystals, which was obviously left behind after the corpse was cremated. Xianxia suddenly opened his eyes. There were two leaping flames in his eyes. He flipped his 5 claws that were spewing out 7 colored flames. The already shrunken fireball was held in his palm, and it kept shrinking. When all the 7 colored flames had entered his palm, a sparkling and translucent purple bead was quietly lying on his palm. There was a faint red light inside the purple bead. So, the bead for a god-level cultivation base is purple. Xianxia looked at the bead in his palm and said excitedly, "Success." Hong Tai-long flashed over to take a look. Xin Yu still did not understand what they were doing. "You'll know once you try." Xianxia threw the bead in his hand and a 7-colored flame sprayed out from his palm. The purple bead spun in the 7-colored flame and quickly absorbed the flame. Gradually, a 3-meter-tall 7-colored flame man appeared. It looked like it was materializing. Xianxia's eyes lit up. Xianxia retracted the flame in his palm and exclaimed as he looked into the sky, "Damn it! He absorbed almost half of the Samadhi true fire in my body." The Samadhi true fire that can cover a radius of 500 meters was condensed into this. Hong Tai-long and Xin Yu stared dumbfoundedly at the 3-meter-tall mighty fireman in the air. He was wearing a 7-colored fire armor and looked extremely lifelike. His pair of fiery golden eyes stared straight ahead without any emotion. The two of them could feel the terrifying power contained in this fire overlord's body. "Wow, I Hong Tai-long have my eyes opened." Hong Tai-long's eyes lit up as he shook his head and exclaimed, "A flame man with Samadhi true fire as a body and a mid-stage god-level cultivation base. This thing is really scary." With a thought from Xianxia, the flame man teleported down and waved his palm like a knife across the long bed made of blood jade and red crystal. It was easily cut in half like a knife cutting through tofu. There wasn't even a sound. The 7-colored flame man suddenly raised his head and looked at Hong Tai-long. Hong Tai-long was shocked and immediately felt something was wrong. He flashed behind Xianxia and shouted angrily, "You want to use me as an experiment? I'm warning you, don't make such a joke. You'll die." Xianxia chuckled. He did have such an idea, but since he had been seen through, it would hurt his feelings to scare him again. He raised his hand and opened his claw. The seven-colored flame man immediately dispersed into Samadhi true fire and was absorbed into Yu Qianchou's body. Finally, the purple bead was in his hand. He looked at it admiringly before putting it away. Hong Tai Long walked out from behind him with lingering fear and asked, "What's this thing called?" "The fire of water, fire, metal, wood and earth. It should be called Fire Soul Mystic Weapon." Yu Qianchou smiled proudly. With such a treasure to protect him, he wouldn't have to fear anything in the three realms. Hong Tai Long clicked his tongue enviously and said, "That means there's still Water Soul Mystic Weapon, Gold Soul Mystic Weapon, Wood Soul Mystic Weapon and Earth Soul Mystic Weapon? Theoretically it should be like this. Snow Emperor's one is called Ice Soul Mystic Weapon." Yu Qianchou nodded and said with pity, "If I'm able to devour the other four great spirits, then coupled with the myriad of tombs within this mausoleum, I'll be able to refine the five-element dark weapons. Who in the three dimensions would be able to stop me then?" Jiu Yu, who was at the side, was shocked. He understood everything now. He had seen the ice soul mystic ice of the great snowy mountain. Obviously, Yu Qianchou had obtained the secret method to refine mystic weapons from Snow Emperor. What shocked him the most was that Yu Qianchou had set his sights on the 10 million divine tombs in the mausoleum of the God of Sin. If he succeeded, wouldn't he have to refine 10 million divine-level dark weapons? Hee. Not to mention the three realms, with so many divine-grade profound weapons, even in the God realm, they would be able to sweep through a region. Hong Tai Long rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "Didn't your master kill quite a few tomb guardians? You probably don't know that we'll find a few good tombs in other places and empty them. Back then our coiling dragon ancestor killed the wind god of the 12 ancient gods. The body of the wind god is also buried here. That's a terrifying expert with the cultivation of a late-stage ancient god. Don't you want to refine him into a mystic weapon?" That wretched smile on his face was filled with the feeling of enticing people to commit a crime. It was obvious that he was very interested in stealing. No wonder he was in cahoots with the myriad swords demon monarch Yidong Kong. One of the 12 ancient gods, late-stage ancient god. Yu Qianchou and Xin Yu both cried out in surprise. The former's eyes were even brighter. He had heard of the wind god's great name before. That was one of the top 12 experts since the creation of the world. If he could refine him into a mystic weapon, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in the divine realm. Yu Qianchou swallowed his saliva with difficulty. His expression suddenly froze and he asked suspiciously, "Hong Tai Long, the tomb of a figure like the wind god must be guarded by an expert. I wonder what their cultivation is like." The smile on Hong Tai Long's face froze and he said awkwardly, "I heard that the people guarding the tomb of the wind god are his left and right envoys. They're called Tianfeng and Difeng. Their cultivation had reached early stage ancient god a long time ago. I wonder what level their cultivation is now, hee. What are you laughing at?" Yu Qianchou snorted and asked, "Digging the tomb of the wind god is no problem. But who can handle the two ancient god experts? You're me. Damn it. Even if you want to die, this is not the way to do it." Even Jiu Yu couldn't help but roll his eyes at Hong Tai Long. Hee. Even if we can't dig the tomb of the wind god, we can still dig the tomb of others. Hong Tai Long didn't give up and said, "Now that you have a mid-stage great god fire soul mystic weapon, you should be able to handle ordinary mid-stage great god tomb guards. Even if you can't, you should be able to stall them. It's enough for you to dig the tomb. Think about it, for a tomb guard of a mid-stage great god expert, the tomb master's cultivation is probably almost at the ancient god level. You can get a few more ancient god level mystic weapons and use them to deal with Tianfeng and Difeng. Won't you be able to dig the tomb of the wind god in the end?" As he spoke, he even made a move to take drastic measures towards this immoral idea. Xin Yu lowered his head and looked at the ground without any expression. Yu Qianchou, on the other hand, nodded in agreement. "That makes sense. But I'm afraid it's not possible now." Hong Tai Long said unwillingly, "Why?" "It's very simple. First, the tomb guards here have already been alerted by my master. I'm afraid that they have already linked up. If we're not careful, we might run into their hands. My master messing around is equivalent to ruining our plans. Second, although this fire soul mystic weapon is powerful, it needs enough fire to boost its power. The true Samadhi fire stored in my body can only be used to scare people. It might be fine against ordinary experts, but it definitely can't support him to fight with a real expert. Otherwise, once he is defeated, he won't be able to revive in time. At that time we'll be in trouble. Zhu and I saw this with our own eyes at the Great Snowy Mountain. Third, with the terrain here, if we really want to do something, only the Earth Soul Mystic Weapon can unleash its full power. If I can devour the Earth Spirit, it'll be much safer. Earth Spirit. Hong Tai Long scratched his head and said gloomily, "Where are we going to find the Earth Spirit at this time?" Hehe. Yu Qianzhou laughed sinisterly and said, "Unfortunately, I've heard Demon King 3 Knights say that he has an Earth Spirit under him. If we want to find an Earth Spirit, I'm afraid we'll have to find trouble with Demon King 3 Knights. Also, I've long wanted to make a move on Jin Tai's Gold Spirit, but I haven't had the chance. Now is the time to do it together." Good. Hong Tai Long clapped his hands and praised, "I'm also going to find Jin Tai to settle the score. Let's go and find him now." Yu Qianzhou nodded and turned to look at Jiu Yu with a smile. "Jiu Yu, this celestial barrier is very deceitful. I'm embarrassed to trouble you to come and fetch us all the time. Why don't you come with us? That way it'll be convenient for everyone. What do you think?" Jiu Yu was speechless. He wanted to refuse, but was there any use in refusing? "If you don't say anything, I'll take it as you agree." Yu Qianzhou directly made the decision for him. With a wave of his hand, the 3 of them instantly disappeared from the tomb. After the 3 of them returned to the underground base of the Divine Ruin Realm, Yu Qianzhou arranged for Jiu Yu to stay in a karst cave deep in the base. Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Ping and Bai Suzhen were all cultivating there. There was also underground water for Jiu Yu, the muscle spirit, to take a bath. At the same time, Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Ping received a hint from Yu Qianzhou that Jiu Yu was very important to him and that nothing should happen to him. In fact, he was under house arrest. Chapter 1183. Inside the underground karst cave, Xin Yu, who was under house arrest, was not afraid at all. Instead, he heaved a sigh of relief. For him, being able to find a secluded place to cultivate in peace was better than anything else. He really didn't want to follow Yu Qianzhou and take risks. In his memory, as long as he followed Yu Qianzhou, there was never a time when he wasn't on tenterhooks. Everything he did was unimaginable and frightening. The underground karst cave was full of twists and turns and the space was quite large. Yu Qianzhou had said that as long as he didn't leave this place, no one would restrict his freedom. Thus, he turned into the depths of a winding passageway and settled down. He had also thought it through. Since he had nowhere to reason with, he might as well obediently serve Yu Qianzhou. It was nothing more than going in and out of the boundary of heavens a few more times. As long as he did his part, based on his understanding of Yu Qianzhou after being in contact with him for so long, Yu Qianzhou would not do anything to him. Hong Tai Long walked around the huge underground karst cave with his hands clasped behind his back. He had no interest in Yu Qianzhou's trivial matters. Yu Qianzhou was negotiating with Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Ping when his gaze suddenly stopped on the stone wall of the karst cave opposite the underground river. A beautiful woman in fluttering white clothes was looking at him gently with a faint smile. Cough cough. That's it. Yu Qianzhou said and directly flashed to the opposite entrance of the cave. Bai Suzhen gently held his hand. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled. Then they turned around and entered the cave together. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other. The former blew his beard and glared at him. What a guy who only cares about the opposite sex. Inside the cave where Bai Suzhen cultivated, there was a clean long couch. Yu Qianzhou was lying comfortably on it with his head resting on the thigh of a beauty. His eyes were wide open as he looked at Bai Suzhen, who was stroking his face and smiling at him. He asked, "Why did you stop cultivating? Did we disturb you?" Bai Suzhen shook her head and said with a smile, "I couldn't hear your voices even after setting up a soundproof enchantment. I just wanted to take a walk after I finished cultivating and saw you." Oh, so that was how it was. By the way, there's something I want to tell you. Yu Qianzhou lay on her lap and told her about what had happened recently, especially about how all the cultivators in the human world had been wiped out. Then he stared at the expression on Bai Suzhen's face without blinking. Bai Suzhen frowned, then nodded slightly and said, "I understand what you mean. When you think it's appropriate, let's go back to my home and move my Snow Fox clan to a safe place." Yu Qianzhou didn't know what to say to this considerate confidant. He raised his hand and grabbed the hand that was caressing his face. A naughty smile suddenly appeared on his face as he said, "I think it's time for our relationship to take another step forward." Take another step forward? Bai Suzhen was startled. For a moment she didn't know what he meant. Yu Qianchou's finger had already gently touched the bulge of her heart. Then he pressed his entire palm on it. Bai Suzhen immediately understood what he meant. A blush appeared on her face and a hint of shyness flashed through her eyes. Bending her soft waist, she lowered her head and took the initiative to press her lips against Yu Qianchou's. The warmth of the other party's body and the attractive aura on their lips immediately ignited the lust in their hearts. Seeing that she agreed, Yu Qianchou's beastly nature instantly erupted. He suddenly flipped over and placed Bai Suzhen on the bed. Bai Suzhen let out a moan. Their mouths couldn't be separated. Their tongues tangled together and his hands were groping all over Bai Suzhen's body. Just as he pulled open Bai Suzhen's clothes, revealing her snow-white skin, his hand touched her soft and smooth skin. Before he could reach in, he suddenly heard Hong Tailong's loud voice coming from outside. "Yu Qianchou, where did you go?" This voice was so loud that even the people outside the base could hear it. "Faster, thief." Yu Qianchou suddenly raised his head and looked at the beautiful woman who was panting under him. He threw caution to the wind and said, "F***ck. Let's not care about him. Let's get down to business first." Just as he laid down again, Bai Suzhen suddenly couldn't help but burst out laughing. She reached out her hand to support his body and said, "You go do what you need to do first. I can't relax with someone outside. Next time come and find me. We'll find a quiet place." What she meant was that this time there was no atmosphere. The swan meat that he could finally taste after waiting for such a long time was scared away by someone. Yu Qianchou instantly jumped up with a face full of grief and indignation. He quickly walked out and his angry roar came from outside. "Hong Tailong, you uncultured thing. I was doing something very important but I was interrupted by a beast like you." Bai Suzhen sat up on the bed and tidied up her messy clothes. When she heard Yu Qianchou yelling at someone outside, she couldn't help but giggle. She tidied up her hair and walked out. Hong Tailong, who had been scolded to the point that his head was spinning, finally waited for Yu Qianchou to take a breather. He said with a stunned expression, "What did I interrupt you for?" Just as he finished speaking, his gaze paused on the hole in the stone wall in front of him. He saw a beautiful woman in white standing there and nodding at him as a greeting. That was the place where Yu Qianchou came out from. Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Peng, and Xin Yu stuck their heads out from 3 different directions and looked in their direction. Hong Tailong instantly realized that he had ruined their plan. He slapped his forehead and said, "So you're just sharpening your axe to cut firewood. I was wrong. I was wrong. You continue with your important business. I'll leave. I promise I won't disturb you anymore." He waved his hand repeatedly to signal Yu Qianchou to go back, then turned around and left. F***cku. Yu Qianchou cursed loudly. He wanted nothing more than to go over and give him 2 kicks. The atmosphere was already ruined. What was the use of you leaving? Hong Tailong pretended not to hear anything. He buried his head in a hole and crawled into it. He faced the wall and drew circles with his index finger. He kept mumbling, I was wrong. Right at this moment, Zhang Ping quickly dashed into the karst cave from the outside. He also heard Hong Tailong's shout and knew that his master had returned. It just so happened that he had something to talk to him about. Who knew that he would see his master so angry the moment he arrived? He stood at the entrance of the cave, not knowing what to do or what was going on. Yu Qianchou glanced at Zhang Ping. He knew that he wouldn't come here for no reason. Therefore he suppressed his anger and temporarily put Hong Tailong's matter aside. He walked over and asked, "What's the matter?" Zhang Ping was stunned. He immediately remembered why he was looking for his master. He quickly replied, "When Rui wanted to look for you a few times, but unfortunately he never met you." "When Rui?" Yu Qianchou paused and frowned. "When Rui from the Wanlanfeng clan?" "Yes." Zhang Ping nodded. Yu Qianchou asked curiously, "Why is he looking for me?" Let's go take a look." The master and disciple flew out together. In the base's conference room, Yu Qianchou didn't have to wait long before Zhang Ping brought Wen Rui over. When Wen Rui saw Yu Qianchou, he quickly bowed and said, "Greetings, torture envoy." We're all acquaintances. Take a seat." Yu Qianchou sat on the seat of honor. He asked curiously, "I heard that you've been looking for me a few times. What's the matter?" When Rui didn't sit, he walked up to him and cupped his hands. "I've been trying to find out something, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to find out anything. Therefore I'd like to ask the torture envoy. Yu Qianchou's eyes flickered. He could roughly guess what Wen Rui wanted to ask, but he still wore a faint smile on his face. Ask away. There's no need to be so reserved. Then I'll be presumptuous. Wen Rui cupped his hands again and said, Here's the thing. There are hundreds of cultivators from the Wen clan. Everyone knows that ancestor Wen Lanfeng has left with you, torture envoy. But this time we didn't even get to see him. Everyone really misses him, so they asked me to ask the torture envoy where our ancestor has gone. Or has something happened to him? Yu Qianchou sat up straight and tapped his fingers on the table. To be honest, I don't know where your ancestor has gone. When I was still in the mystic immortal city, your ancestor found me. He said that he wanted to regain his dignity in front of Lu Yanqing. You should know that your ancestor has deep feelings for Valley Master Lu, so he left to cultivate alone. I've been looking for him often, but unfortunately I haven't heard from him yet. I'm also worried that something might have happened to him. So that's how it is. When Rui bowed, a thoughtful expression on his face. After a while he looked like he wanted to say something but hesitated. Speak your mind. I'll definitely help you if I can solve any problems. Yu Qianchou didn't finish his sentence. He wondered if the Wen clan didn't have the upper hand in the military competition system, so they wanted to find Wen Lanfeng to support them. If that was the case, he would have to reason with him. Unexpectedly, Wen Rui hesitated for a while and cupped his hands. I have a presumptuous request. I hope the torture envoy can agree to it. Tell me what it is first. Yu Qianchou smiled gently. Well, Wen Rui was a little embarrassed. To tell you the truth, the ancestor is the backbone of the Wen clan. Hundreds of clansmen want to find the ancestor and have been urging me to do so. I'm wondering, can the torture envoy allow me to go to the immortal realm to inquire about the ancestor? You want to leave this place alone? Yu Qianchou's smile froze, then he smiled faintly again. It's not that I don't want to promise you, but the immortal realm is currently in a time where the demonic Dao is running rampant. It's too dangerous for you to go out alone. I'm afraid that once you leave this place you'll most likely die. Wen Lanfeng is no longer here, so I have to be responsible for your safety. Wen Rui thought that this would be enough to make the other party retreat, but unexpectedly, Wen Rui plopped down on his knees and kowtowed, sobbing. Wen Rui has been entrusted by hundreds of clansmen to find the ancestor. Whether the ancestor is dead or alive, as long as there's news of the ancestor, we'll be at ease. As long as I can inquire about the ancestor's whereabouts, Wen Rui's insignificant life is nothing. Even if I die, it won't be regretted. Yu Qianchou was taken aback. Just a moment ago he had hardened his heart and had some killing intent. However, when a man like him knelt down and cried on the spot, he immediately felt apologetic. Thus he felt pity for him and quickly got up to help him up. Get up. I understand your difficulties and your feelings. Such loyalty is commendable. How can I refuse you? How about this? Go back and make some preparations. When I leave, I'll take you with me. How about that? Chapter 1184. After Wen Rui left, Zhang Peng looked at his master in confusion. He felt that this was not his master's character. He didn't know if his master had other plans, so he approached and asked, Master, are you really going to let him leave here alone? What he meant was the old rule. If it was inconvenient for him to be the bad guy, then he would be the scapegoat. He was used to being the scapegoat anyway, so he didn't mind taking one more. For example, Nongzhu almost fell out with him last time because of the Jasper Flower Fairy. However, Zhang Ping was now in power and decisive. His millions of troops only needed an order to attack immediately. Zhang Peng's face darkened and Nongzhu couldn't do anything to him. After all, he wasn't Yu Qianchou and he wasn't familiar with him. He wouldn't give him a chance to scold and order him around. Zhang Peng was ready to get rid of Wen Rui as long as Yu Qianchou didn't say anything. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianchou, who was standing with his hands behind his back, thought of the Snow Empress and her husband in the Great Snow Mountain. He shook his head slightly and sighed, Let him go. After all, they are all acquaintances in the human world. I don't want to lose the last bit of old affection. He really didn't want to gain more and lose more. He sighed with emotion and a rare compassion. Zhang Peng had grown up on the battlefield and was used to living on the edge of a knife. His understanding of soft-heartedness was even more thorough than his master's. Once he discovered someone who was dangerous to the overall situation, he wouldn't even blink when he saw blood splattering everywhere. He frowned and said, What if he leaks the location of our base after leaving? So what? Yu Qianchou, who was facing the wall in deep thought, turned around and said confidently, the base is in the ruins of God. Even if Sanyi knows we are inside, what can he do to us? The ruins of God is still too early to open. I don't think they can do anything to us. Besides, if Wen Rui is really a disloyal person, keeping him around is more dangerous than letting him go. Yes. This disciple understands. If there is nothing else, this disciple will take his leave. Zhang Peng respectfully retreated. Although he appeared to be obeying, he still felt that something was wrong. For him, as the commander of an army, if he did not plan for the overall situation, he would not be able to plan for a region, and if he did not plan for 10,000 generations, he would not be able to plan for a moment. This was also what his master had told him, and he had always believed it. Therefore, he had to be ready to deal with unexpected events at any time. Moreover, the world of cultivation was different from the mortal world. There were countless strange things happening and nothing was absolute. If there was an emergency and he didn't handle it well, then he would be derelict in his duty. However, he still obeyed his master's decision unconditionally. However, he was prepared to make the best preparations within the scope of his authority. He decided to adjust the defense of the army so that he would not be caught off guard if an accident happened. Not long after Zhang Peng left, Nongzhu burst in again. As soon as she saw Yu Qianchou, she pounded the table and yelled, Yu Qianchou, what do you mean? What's wrong? Why are you throwing such a tantrum? Who provoked you? Yu Qianchou pretended not to know the answer. Cut it out. Don't tell me you don't know about Qianghua. Nongzhu told him what had happened. It turned out that after Qianghua Fairy was taken away by Zhang Ping, Qianghua Fairy told Zi that they were mother and daughter when he was in a coma. Now Zi looked sad when she saw him and ignored him. But how could such a thing happen? Yu Qianchou was surprised. He spread out his hands and said, I really don't know. I'm sure it has nothing to do with me. Bullshit. Nongzhu kicked over the chair and pointed at Yu Qianchou's nose. She scolded, no one else knows about the thing between me and Qianghua except you. It's no wonder that you didn't instruct her. Now Zi doesn't care about me anymore. If you don't solve this problem, I won't let you go. Yu Qianchou waved his hand with a solemn expression, indicating that he really wasn't the one who ordered this. Suddenly he frowned and said, I understand. I told Zhang Peng about your relationship with Fairy Jade Flower and asked him to take care of Fairy Jade Flower. Actually, I had good intentions. Later you were injured, so I asked Zhang Peng to arrange a careful woman to take care of you. Did that bastard take Qianghua Fairy to you? You. Nongzhu pointed at him and didn't know what to say. She also didn't know whether this guy was telling the truth or not. Although she felt that it was reasonable and could be true, she knew Yu Qianchou too well. She always believed only 30% of the words that came out of his mouth. Don't be angry. It really has nothing to do with me. Of course. I won't shirk my responsibility. I'll give you a satisfactory explanation. Yu Qianchou walked over with a gloomy face and a faint murderous intent. He said in a low voice, that Qianghua Fairy is so hateful. We can't vent our hatred if we don't teach her a lesson. How about this? I'll personally talk to Zi and tell her that Jasper Flower Fairy is a person with ulterior motives. I'll let Zhang Ping deal with the trouble he caused. I'll let Zhang Ping use military law to pry open her mouth and make her beg for death. I guarantee that she'll personally tell Zi that she lied to her before. What do you think? Nongzhu was speechless. He sensed Yu Qianchou's killing intent and did not doubt that this cruel and merciless guy would kill Qianghua Fairy. But to be honest, after all, they had been husband and wife for one night. Nongzhu did not want to torture Qianghua Fairy to the point where she begged for death. But he still said stubbornly, keep pretending. Then he swung his sleeves and left. Alas. Don't go. Yu Qianchou chased after him and shouted, I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, I'll tell Zhang Ping first. If you want, you can ask Zhang Ping to deal with it. Get out of here. Nongzhu turned around and spat on his face, then left. Yu Qianchou wiped the spittle off his face and hummed a Beijing opera song. I was watching the mountain scenery from the tower when I heard the chaos outside the city. Flags fluttered in the air, but it turned out to be the soldiers sent by General Sima. With his hands behind his back, he walked back proudly. In the main bedroom of the backyard of the passionless palace in the mystic Immortal city, a woman's blood-boiling moan kept ringing. Sometimes it was low, sometimes it was loud and clear. After the violent crash, the muscular, naked Demon King 3 Knights lay down on the bed in a relaxed manner. The Demon King's charming eyes were like silk as she stretched out her curvaceous and proud white body. After cleaning the Demon King 3 Knights, she laid down on his chest and asked softly, "Demon King, you're a good girl. I heard news from the underworld that Bai Qi has gone missing. What's going on?" "He's looking for trouble. When the time comes, don't blame me for breaking my promise." The Demon King of 3 Knights' eyes flickered. He raised his hand and lifted the goose egg-like white chin on his chest. He smiled faintly and said, "Could it be that you're sleeping next to me but you're thinking of Bai Qi? The two of you seem to have loved each other to death. Could it be that you still have feelings for him?" The Demon King of Azure Sky pushed his hand away and lay back on the bed. She snorted coldly and said, "I've already cut off all ties with him. If it wasn't for the Demon King's promise just because he sealed me in the demon realm for so many years, I would have torn him to pieces." It was only when they were on the bed that she dared to make a move on the Demon King of 3 Knights. The Demon King of 3 Knights gave a non-committal, "Oh." Suddenly Uniquely knocked on the door and shouted, "Demon King." The Demon King of 3 Knights pushed the Demon King of Azure Sky away and got off the bed. The Demon King of Azure Sky hurriedly got up and helped him put on his armor and cloak. He watched as the Demon King of 3 Knights strode out. Then he slowly took a few steps back and sat on the bed with his butt bare. He seemed to have lost something. Suddenly he heard the conversation outside mention Zhou Xian. He immediately came to his senses and quickly put on his clothes. In the courtyard outside, the Demon King of 3 Knights suddenly turned around and asked. He said he came from the human realm and just escaped from the hands of the ruins of God realm Xianxia. He's Vice Palace Lord Yan's servant? Uniquely bowed slightly and said, "Yes. I've checked. He was indeed affected by the demon eye ecstasy. It shouldn't be fake. All the passages leading to the human realm have been cut off. I thought that Xianxia wanted to stay in the human realm and not interfere with the matters of our demonic path army. I didn't think that he would actually hide in the ruins of God realm." The Demon King of 3 Knights sneered and said, "Bring that person to see me. Also, bring Vice Palace Lord Yan over to confront him." Uniquely quickly left and brought Yan Zhuixing and Wen Rui over not long after. Yan Zhuixing had already recovered to his original state. He had suffered a great loss in the demon realm and had his physical body destroyed. If not for the miraculous demonic arts and the 3 knights and the others helping him find a suitable body to take over, he probably wouldn't have recovered so quickly. As for Wen Rui, because he had long been controlled by Yan Zhuixing's demon eye, after thinking of ways to get Xianxia to be sent out of the ruins of God realm, he immediately found the people of the demon realm and declared that he was Yan Zhuixing's subordinate. When the people of the demon realm heard that he was Vice Palace Lord Yan's subordinate, they didn't dare to delay and immediately arranged for him to be sent over to verify. When the master and servant met, Yan Zhuixing had already asked about Wen Rui's situation on the way here, so he already had an understanding of the situation. After arriving at the backyard, the two of them bowed to the Demon King of 3 Knights. Wen Rui then gave a detailed answer to the Demon King of 3 Knights' questions about the situation in the ruins of God realm. Just what kind of mystical treasure is it, to actually be able to travel back and forth between the 3 realms at will? The Demon King of 3 Knights' eyes flickered and said, "No wonder the passage to the human realm was sealed, and Xianxia was still able to run to the already sealed ruins of God realm." The Azure Sky Great Demon King had already tidied himself up and stood quietly behind him. For a woman to be able to come out of the Demon King of 3 Knights' bedroom, it was obvious what she had done before. Yan Zhuixing couldn't help but take a few more glances, but what he was most worried about was that the human realm was sealed. There were still people he cared about there. However, there were some secrets that he didn't want to completely confess, so he impatiently cupped his hands and said, "Demon King, my mother and sister are still in the hands of Xianxia. Please think of a way to save them, Demon King." "Of course." The Demon King of 3 Knights nodded, then tilted his head slightly and said, "That sealed ruins of God realm, Jin Tai should know better than us." Uniquely understood what he meant. He wanted to find Jin Tai, so he bowed slightly and left,